May I respond?
No.
Question.
Panel, thank you for being here. And the next three.
Thanks for that.
Thank you. Next, Corey Watkins, William Clem, Galen George. And folks, if you have decided you don't wish to testify, just don't come up and we'll show you registered but not wishing to testify. The next three on deck, TJ Fabi, Daniel Hannon, and Jonathan Garcia. Next three will be TJ Fabi, Daniel Hannon, and Jonathan Garcia. And let's see, start with Mr. Watkins.
Yes, thank you. Corey Watkins.
State your name, who you represent, and if you're testifying on, for, or against.
Yes, sir. Corey Watkins. I'm testifying on 375. I'm for it, and I'm representing myself. I just want to say that we do not live in a democracy. We live in a constitutional republic, and what that means is if every single legislator up here and every single person behind me wanted to regulate or put some kind of restriction on the right to keep and bear arms, that restriction is null and void. You can't do that. We have a right that is guaranteed to us by our Creator, and it's protected by the Constitution. The Constitution is clear when it says shall not be infringed. That means that no legislator, no government official has a right to put any regulation or restriction against our right. I find it kind of crazy that I can walk around with my AK-47, which I do on a regular basis, with a 40-round magazine loaded, one in the chamber. But I can't simply put a Glock 19 on my hip and carry it around. I have to have a license, and I have to ask my government for permission and pay a tax to do that. I've been walking around with an AK-47 for the last 4 or 5 years, no problems at all. And I feel like I would be much more comfortable and better off if I could do that with my Glock. I noticed that one of the police officers said something about training.
I'm sorry, but your time's up. Can you wrap it up?
Yes, I can.
And by the way, I finally found something I agree with you on. I find it crazy that you can walk around with that gun too.
Right.
Go ahead, wrap it up, bud.
I went by your office and I didn't put my foot in your door this time.
Let's wrap it up, dude.
All right. The police officer was talking about safety and training and stuff like that, and then she later admitted that the training that's going on right now really is no training at all. So, thank you.
Thanks, Corey. Good seeing you again, by the way.
He's a tyrant.
All right. Any questions, members? And again, I'll say this is we're doing real good up to now, and so let's just keep doing that again. Any questions, Mr. Watkins? No? All right, we got Mr. Clem. Mr. Clem, your name again, your position on the bill, and who you represent when you testify.
I represent myself. My position on the bill is for HB 375, and my name is William Earl Clem III. 14 words, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. I don't believe I need 9 Supreme Court justices in D.C. to tell me how that is interpreted. The words are pretty clear. It's 14 simple words. So for decades now, since before I was even born, my right to keep and bear arms has been unconstitutionally infringed upon. I don't believe in this panel's ability to pass legislation against my Second Amendment rights, and the only reason why I support this legislation is because it's a reversal of unconstitutional legislation against my Second Amendment rights. Taxation is theft.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Clem? Sorry. Were you done? I'm sorry. I didn't.
Yeah, I'm finished.
Any questions? Thank you, Mr. Clem. And now we've got Mr. George. Again, same thing. Your full name, Mr. George, position on the bill, and who you represent.
Yes, I'm Galen George. I'm here to testify for HB 375, and I am testifying for myself. I believe the Second Amendment is crystal clear in its intent that the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. I've thought about this for years and wondered why in the state of Texas we simply can't just read the Second Amendment and obey its intent. I realize that some people throughout the years have chosen to make this a controversial passage in the Constitution. Many on both sides present their arguments, trying to present statistics to back up their point of view, but I believe it's much simpler than that. That the Founding Fathers had the benefit of wisdom in submerging themselves and studying not only where they came from, but also several thousand years of history, of tradition in Western culture. In ancient Greece, armed forces were ordinary citizens. In politics, Aristotle identified the right as synonymous with citizenship. The militia has a long history, and while we're not specifically talking about militia in HB 375, we are talking about the foundational principle upon which the militia relies for its citizens to be able to keep and bear arms without infringement. When any state requires its citizens to apply for a license to carry their handgun, they are creating a registry of gun owners, thereby making their guns subject to seizure in the presence of a tyrannical government which expressly goes against the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment links the right to keep and bear arms to the free state, not just a state, but a free state. The militia whose existence and continuance is guaranteed by the Second Amendment was intended by the Founding Fathers to serve as a safeguard against tyranny. Alexander Hamilton wrote in Federalist Paper 29 that if the government were ever tried to oppress the people with a standing army, the army would encounter, quote, a large body of citizens, little, if at all, inferior to them in
Mr. George,
discipline.
I'm sorry, but can you kind of wrap it up
Just
a little bit?
finishing the sentence.
Yes, sir.
And the use of arms who stand ready to defend their own rights and those of their fellow citizens. By creating that registry through licensing, you're taking away what the Founding Fathers intended, and that was to be anonymous and not have the state know who had the guns and where they were at so they could seize them.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank all of you for doing this. It's great.
All right, now we're going to call up TJ Fabi, Daniel Hannon, and Jonathan Garcia. And then on the on deck, we've got CJ Grisham, Jason Rogers, and George Landiver. And so, gentlemen, again, your name, who you represent, and your position on the bill, okay? And our first one is Mr. Fabi.
My name is TJ Fabi. I am here representing myself, my family, and co-workers and friends that agree with me. They couldn't make it here. And I am here to testify for this bill. This is a God-given right, a right to self-defense. It's not something that is given to us by anybody sitting in this room or anybody sitting in the White House or in D.C. It was given to us by God, and over the years, men have tried to take this right away from other men and delegate who would have this right and who wouldn't. But I'm here to tell you that the right was given to us by God to defend ourselves. And that's all that we ask, is that we be able to lawfully defend ourselves. And I've heard a lot of fear-mongering. We heard it a lot back in the 84th session about licensed open carry. We heard that there'd be blood in the streets, and they brought up the bell tower shooter, which had nothing to do with handguns, and they brought up a lot of other things that had nothing to do with handguns. And we don't have blood in the streets. And there's not any real rise in crime. And so I'm just asking you to trust the people with freedom. Trust the people with freedom. We trust you with power. Trust us with freedom. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fabi. Appreciate it. Our next witness is Daniel Hannon.
Hi, I'm Daniel Hannon. I'm here on behalf of myself, and I'm testifying in favor of HB 375. What this bill's about to me, really, is it's not so much just a gun owner's bill, it's about self-defense. I know a lot of people in this room who have testified. We practice with guns a lot. You know, it's the gun culture. But we have families at home, whether they're moms or sisters or brothers or sons, who are law-abiding people who come with us to the range, who learn how to shoot, and fortunately, usually we don't have to ever use a gun or anything to defend ourselves, but it's all about that time when you're not expecting it, or you're visiting a bad neighborhood and you don't feel safe, so maybe for once in your life you want to pack a gun. So and not just criminals too, but there's in small towns sometimes we might have a neighbor who wants us to check on his livestock or whatever, and he lives a quarter mile down the road. You just walk down there, and it'd just be easier if you could pack a pistol rather than having to carry a shotgun. Thank you for this opportunity to speak in favor of this next step for Texas and liberty.
Thank you, Mr. Hanna. Appreciate your testimony. This is Mr. Garcia.
Yes, Jonathan Garcia. I am speaking for the bill, and I am representing myself as well as Open Carry Texas. I am on the board of directors. So I'm going to cut everything I was going to say, which has already been said for the most part. But I'd like to address a couple of concerns that you specifically had with the bill, Representative. You discussed earlier, near the very beginning of the meeting, about an officer approaching an individual to ask them for their license to carry or whether or not they even have a right to own a firearm. And I would express to you that this bill does not change any of that at all, from how it currently is to how it will be if this law is passed. The same standards of probable cause exist with or without this bill. An officer needs probable cause to believe that an individual specifically is a felon or is in other ways not able to carry that firearm.
And if you don't mind,
Yeah.
Mr. Garcia, and I don't mean to interrupt you, I'm going to give you a little more time,
Sure.
but therein lies the rub, is because of the way the bill's going to work, and honestly, in theory, I don't really have an axe to grind on what you want to do and how you want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But the practical side of it and what you're describing right there, again, therein lies the rub, is the officer has no ability, without violating several constitutional precedents
Correct.
regarding probable cause. You made a very astute point about that.
Mm-hmm.
That without violating several established principles of probable cause, an officer who's trying to determine whether a person, not all of us are like this gentleman that sat in your seat and said he could smell a bad guy like Deputy Dog. I mean, we're not all like that. I'm sure most cops aren't that way. But
It's usually fairly obvious.
well, I'm going to disagree with that. But the point is that very issue right there is where there's going to be a crux of issues for law enforcement that don't have the ability and the smell power of Deputy Dog, if that makes sense.
Okay.
And it's unfortunate because what would happen more often than not is people like you, good folks like you that value their rights, are probably going to have them trampled because you're going to become a litmus test for probable cause. I hope I'm wrong.
We have good lawyers.
Well, I'm glad. I'm glad you do. I hope I'm wrong. But I want to point out that little incongruent part of it because I think it is incongruent. But I appreciate your testimony, and you can finish up. I'm sorry.
Sure. And just to respond to that, it really doesn't matter either way whether you're correct or I'm correct or whatever the case may be. This law does not change one way or the other what the litmus test for probable cause is in a context such as that. But to continue my testimony, I will say that a felon is not, or an individual who is not able to be legal to carry, is going to, if they want to carry, they're going to carry anyway. They already do. There are people all across the state who are not licensed to carry, who carry anyway. And that's why we have crime. If you look at the crime statistics, amongst those who are licensed to carry, it's minuscule. Minuscule how many people with licenses commit crime. Far less than even police officers. So those individuals are carrying already. Those individuals are out there on the streets. those individuals are committing crimes, and it's up to us to stop blocking the people who are not committing crimes from being able to defend themselves and putting undue restrictions upon that. And
All right.
everything else I think
All right,
has
Mr.
pretty much
Garcia,
already been
well,
covered.
I
Yeah.
appreciate your testimony. Thank you
So
for coming
I'm open to
down.
any other questions.
Any questions, members? None? Okay, we need to get, thank you all, appreciate it. Mr. Grisham, Mr. Rogers, and Mr. Landover, and then on the on deck, we need Andrew Clements, Lauren Landover, and Amy Mobley Turney. Please, be ready. And then, you guys have heard me say it before and heard Chairman King say it, but I'll say it again, is name who you represent and your position on the bill. And we'll start with Mr. Grisham.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for having this hearing. We truly appreciate it. I think, Mr. Navarez, you should actually change your profession to fortune teller, because last session you said we'd be back, and you were right.
I'm good like that.
I want to start off by reading a quote here. When firearms are openly carried by untrained individuals, it is less likely that these individuals will properly retain control of their weapons. Therefore, others are able to easily disarm carriers in order to use the weapons against innocent bystanders. Allowing the carry of deadly weapons could cause the escalation of disagreements between citizens and could lead to increased incidents of violence and deadly weapons in the state of Mississippi. Take out the state of Mississippi, and you're hearing the exact same arguments here in Texas. Well, the same people that made those claims, Ken Winter, who was the director of the State Association of the Chiefs of Police, and this was about the constitutional carry bill in Mississippi, was asked about this a few years after the law was passed, and then he had to say this: it's been kind of a non-issue. So we don't have to guess. We've got all these people in here that have been wrong time and time again. Law enforcement has come in here since 1995 and testified against every pro-gun bill that widened our rights, and they've been wrong every single time. They have zero credibility. Now, I'm not attacking law enforcement, but they have zero credibility on gun issues. Zero. Because they have been wrong consistently. You can listen to their testimony and see what really happened, and there you have it. I would also like to say that the CLEAT is wrong. They do not have the authority to just stop somebody and demand to see their IDs.
I'm sorry, Mr. Grisham, your time's up.
Okay. So I'll just finish with Terry v. Ohio and Northrop v. Toledo Police Department.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Our next witness is Jason Rogers. Same drill, Mr. Rogers, please.
Hey, Jason Rogers. I'm representing Texas Carry as well as myself. Mr. Chairman, we are for HB 375. While we agree that there is definitely an advancement of rights involved, we do also feel that there are some changes that need to be made. Those in the areas of campus carry, as well as the age, being 21 and over. With changes made, we would be in full support of the bill and able to move forward in agreement. So that being said, our recommendation and suggestion, as well as humble request, is working with Terry Holcomb of Texas Carry on those changes.
Is that it? Members, are there any questions? And I'm sorry, I didn't ask you if anybody had any questions of Mr. Grisham. Does anybody have any questions of Mr. Grisham? Okay, Mr. Rogers, does anybody have any questions for Mr. Rogers?
Could we just clarify for the record that you are testifying in favor of the bill?
We are testifying in favor of the bill.
Thank you.
Okay, no questions of Mr. Rogers. Next witness is Mr. Landover, Mr. Jorge Landover. Can you, same thing, same drill.
Jorge Landovar testifying in favor of HB 375.
Who do you represent?
I represent myself. And one thing I want to bring up, this slavery issue has been brought up several times, as Mr. Johnson brought up. Part of the reason it's brought up is because there is a famous Supreme Court case where racists on the Supreme Court actually used the carry of arms as a reason to deny citizenship to blacks. The case is Dred Scott. Here, quoting from Dred Scott. Every citizen shall have the right to keep and bear arms in the lawful defense of himself or the state. But wrong one. And and it would give them the full liberty of speech in public and in private upon all subjects upon which its own citizens might speak, to hold public meetings upon political affairs, and to keep and carry arms wherever they went. And they were citing that as why they did not want blacks to have citizenship, why they could not be treated as people. It was specifically because they were scared they might have guns. Also, right now we do have constitutional carry in Texas, but only if I'm not in my own county. If I'm in my county in Travis, I'm sorry, Tarrant, I can't actually carry my gun legally without a license. But if I go to your county, section 46.15b.
Landover, I got to interrupt you right there. We're
Yes.
out of time. Can you just wrap it up? You got 2 seconds.
Yes, sir. Section 4615b2 of the Penal Code allows me to carry while traveling on my person legally without a license.
That was 6 seconds. Can I get 4 seconds back?
Here.
All right, so we got, all right, thank you all. Any questions for Mr. Landover? No? All right. So now we've got Mr. Clements, Ms. Landover, and Ms. Turney, and then on deck we have Mr. Glossop, Michael Gilden, and David Ahmad. So who do we have? We have Ms. Landover and Ms. Turney, right? Okay, Ms. Landover, please. And go ahead, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Lauren Landivar. I'm testifying on behalf of myself. I don't want to take the full 2 minutes. I listened to this and I hear a lot of facts being presented, and so I looked up a couple of them while I was doing this. I know that people are concerned about accidental shootings with kids, but the statistics that are being presented don't take into account gang members killing other gang members. I actually looked up a Diane Sawyer special report on ABC in 2014. It said that 98 kids in the entire country died in accidental shootings in 2010, a number that is on the decline despite the increased access to firearms. U.S. population at the time was 308 million, so that's a percent of 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 the population that is having any problem here. To put that in perspective, there were over 30,000 car fatalities. You're more likely to die falling out of bed than you are to be a kid in an accidental shooting. So that was just the one that stuck by me, and I'll yield the rest of my time.
Any questions for Ms. Landover? None? The chair calls Ms. Turney. Ms. Turney, same thing, please.
Yes. My name is Amy Mobley Turney. I'm testifying as myself and as a member and on behalf of the League of Women Voters of Texas against House Bill 375.
Yes, ma'am.
We appreciate the opportunity to appear before you today. Thank you for allowing us to share the League of Women Voters of Texas position on this bill. We oppose House Bill 375. Our position on gun safety, like other League positions, is derived through a lengthy and thoughtful process involving the participation of 25 local leagues representing more than 5,000 members and supporters throughout the state of Texas. The League of Women Voters of Texas opposes this proposed legislation because it removes virtually every safeguard currently in place to ensure that dangerous individuals are prevented from carrying handguns in public by repealing requirements that people carrying handguns apply for a permit, and repealing certain eligibility standards such as passing a background check and demonstrating proof of firearms safety training. The Second Amendment is one sentence. It reads in its entirety, "A well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed." Justice Antonin Scalia wrote in his majority opinion in District of Columbia v. Heller, "There seems to us no doubt on the basis of both text and history that the Second Amendment conferred an individual right to keep and bear arms. Of course, the right was not unlimited, just as the First Amendment's right of free speech was not. Thus, we do not read the Second Amendment to protect the right of citizens to carry arms for any sort of confrontation."
Excuse me, ma'am. I think you're out of time, so I'm going to give you 2 seconds to wrap up.
Thank you. I will wrap up with his last statement, which was, he states that the prohibitions on carrying concealed weapons were lawful under the Second Amendment.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Any questions of Ms. Turney? No questions? Thank you all. And so we need Mr. Randy Glossop. Oh, Andrew Clemens, is he? Where is he? What do we need to do for him? We have Andrew Clements, and we're going to show him, he was representing himself, and he was for the bill. And so now we've got Randy Glossop, Michael Gilden, and David Ahmad. Same thing that I've asked the other witnesses. Who are you, sir? I'm sorry.
Randy Glossop.
Mr. Glossop. All right, Mr. Glossop, the chair calls Randy Glossop.
So,
Go ahead.
Randy Glossop, I'm representing myself and my family, and I am for House Bill 375.
Thank you.
And I guess really I'm not terribly complicated on this matter, but I hear a lot of liberal talking points about this Heller case and a lot of training. But, you know, and I guess the training sounds good, and I'd probably sign up for that as soon as they get some of these criminals trained up. I mean, because it seems to me like this constitutional carry bill is for law-abiding citizens, but yet all the restrictions, you know, are being put on law-abiding citizens, where the criminals, they already have their firearms. I guess the other thing I hear is just a lot of misinformation. I keep hearing people quoting the Heller case. The Heller case struck down an unconstitutional ban on ownership in your house, and the Supreme Court in a 5-4 decision affirmed that the Second Amendment was an individual right to keep and bear arms. So, you know, it kind of seems like facts don't care about your feelings because, you know, they are facts. And I do want to say that I appreciate all of you serving our great state of Texas.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Glossop? None? Thank you, Mr. Glossop.
Thank
Appreciate you. Now we've got Michael Gilden, who appeared for himself or registered for himself and for the bill, did not come. And we have David Ahmad, who registered for the bill and represented himself and Open Carry Texas. And now we've got Rachel Malone, Justine Benavides, and Heather Hill. And then on deck, we've got Brandon Michael Davis, Susan Dantzler, and John Britton. Your name, please?
I'm David Ahmed.
Can you tell us your... Oh, okay. So, well, hold on. 1 second. You want to go ahead? Just 1 second. Is Rachel Malone? Yeah. Come on, Rachel. How about Miss Hill?
No, I just didn't hear I was on deck. You're good.
Come on.
My name is Rachel Malone.
No, hold on.
Sorry.
Mr. Ahmad, go ahead.
My name is David Ahmed. I'm the Vice President of Open Carry Texas. I'm representing myself and that organization, and I'm here to testify for 375. I've heard a lot of emotional arguments against this bill, so I thought I'd argue for it with a few cold, hard facts. And it's as simple as this. In 1995, we got licensed concealed carry. It was said there was going to be blood in the streets. That never happened. That is a fact, and everyone here knows it. 2009, we got the Texas Motorist Protection Act. That allows anyone who can legally own a gun to legally carry that gun in their vehicle. They said that there was going to be shootouts and chaos. That never happened. That is a fact, and everyone here knows it. Last session, we got open carry. They said it was going to take us back to the Wild West. That never happened. That is a fact, and everybody here knows it. So eventually, when we do get constitutional carry, and we will, because we're never going to stop, you know what's going to happen? Nothing. And that is a fact. And everybody here knows it.
I've got a question for you, sir. So if nothing's going to happen, why don't we just stay pat?
I'm sorry?
I mean, if nothing's going to happen, why don't we just stand? In other words, if nothing's nothing, why don't we just stay pat where we are?
I'm a little confused, sir. Are you
Well,
asking why do anything if it's...
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like, and I mean, again, I'm just kind of following what you're saying to its logical conclusion. I agree with you. You know, there's a lot of hyperbole on both sides of the issue.
Right.
So if it doesn't make a difference, you know, it's 6 on one hand, half a dozen on the other, what do we do?
it's not 6 on one hand and half a dozen on the other. right now in order to do what I should be just simply allowed to do because it's my right. I have to jump through hoops and pay a bunch of money. I have to ask permission that I should not have to ask for. It's as simple as that.
Mr. Chairman. Well, I'm not done. I got one more question. Did you hear Mr. Glossop when he said that about the training and criminals don't need training? Would you agree with me that the training has to do not so much with being able to deal with a criminal, but how to actually handle the gun, meaning loading it, how to properly point it, how to keep it from discharging, how to keep from shooting yourself in the foot.
That's right.
You know, how to point it up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, how to check if there's a round in the chamber, how to take it apart,
Mm-hmm.
how to clean it.
That's right.
And also learning where and when are the places that you can carry it, some of the safety issues. Not necessarily how to be, you know, I don't know, Dirty Harry, but learning how to handle the gun.
How to use it properly.
Right. And so we can distinguish training, you know, SEAL training or how to be a cop training from actually handling the gun, right?
That's right.
And the majority of us have to, at some point, we're not born and all of a sudden we pick up a firearm and, you know, we're spinning it around and taking it apart and putting it back together. We don't do that, right? You know,
Well-
a child doesn't just pick up a gun and start figuring out how to do that. They learn.
No,
it.
you have to learn how.
Okay, and so you would agree with me at some point that has to be taught.
Yes,
And-
absolutely.
And at some point, not only does it have to be taught, but it has to be demonstrated that you can actually do it, right?
Yes, sir. Let me ask you a question. Why do you think folks carry a gun?
Hold on. It doesn't work that way.
Okay.
Is you testify and we ask the questions and you answer it.
Okay.
I'll answer your question out there, but not here.
Okay, so
No, right now.
do I get to respond to your
Yeah,
question?
you can answer the question.
Okay, my answer to the question is very simply this. People carry a gun because they want to stay alive. And in order to stay alive, to use that gun to defend yourself, you have to know how to use it.
Yeah.
It's just as simple as that, which means that people go and learn how to use that gun long before they apply for a license. Someone who goes and applies for a license already knows how to use a gun. And by the way, have you ever taken the license to carry class?
Yeah.
There's very little gun instruction. It's mostly a law class.
I've got a concealed permit, but my point being is it's got to get taught somewhere.
I absolutely agree with you. And my response to that is gun owners want to be taught. We naturally seek that out. We don't want to carry that gun around as a showpiece. It's a tool. And we need to know how to use that tool, so we learn all on our own. We don't need daddy government to tell us that we have to.
You're preaching to the choir, Mr. All right, so now we've got, did you have a question? You good? All right, let's go. Ms. Malone, same drill, please.
My name is Rachel Malone. I'm representing myself and Texas Firearms Freedom, and I am testifying in favor of HB 375 constitutional carry. I've testified on dozens of bills, and I have never been more excited to testify on a bill than I am to testify in favor of this one today, because I believe this is the most important thing that we can do to make Texas a safer and freer and stronger state. So constitutional carry has been my number one priority, but it's not only mine. As I've been asked to speak to various groups, dozens of groups, speaking to hundreds of people throughout Texas, even especially within the past couple of months, many of the groups specifically ask me to speak on constitutional carry. They want to know what it is, and as soon as they hear what it is, they want to know what they can do to support it. And this is not just fringe gun groups or radical groups. These are groups of people who are interested in promoting liberty or promoting legislation or various things that could be good for their communities, who may never even want to carry a gun, and they realize this is good legislation for our state. Constitutional carry is becoming a trend not only in Texas, but throughout the United States. In 2013, there were 4 or 5 states that recognized constitutional carry. And now, a mere 4 years later, nearly 25% of states have solid, unlicensed, open or concealed carry for those who may possess a firearm. And several others have a form. I think close to 31 states have unlicensed open carry. A number of others are considering full constitutional carry. If we wait another 2 years to get this, we're going to be maybe the 45th state to boldly go where everybody else has already gone. This has been an energizing issue within the Republican Party of Texas as well. I gave a speech in 2014 to the Platform Committee, and I got a unanimous standing ovation, which is kind of hard to do in the RPT Platform Committee.
Ms. Malone?
Yes,
could
am
you
I out of
wrap it
time?
up? Yeah, 2 seconds.
All right, I ask you to pass constitutional carry for the safety and good of Texas. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate it. Any questions for Ms. Malone? The other thing I remind all the witnesses is, we've been here for quite a while, and we're probably going to be here a little bit longer, is if you could all limit your comments to something that we haven't heard yet or something. And I know everybody wants to say their piece, and that's fine. And if you can't, and if you just want to say that, that's great. We agree with that. But just if we can, cover some new ground, it'd be great. Ma'am, your name.
Thank you very much.
Your name, your position on the bill, and who you represent.
Members of the Committee of Homeland Security and Public Safety, thank you for your time. My name is Heather Hill, and I'm representing myself, and I am a representative of Come and Take It, Texas. I am testifying in favor of HB 375. I don't know why we are here fighting for what is already our constitutionally protected right, but our human right endowed by our Creator to defend ourselves. For goodness sakes, this is Texas, home of the Alamo, or have we forgotten our history? Come and Take It, Texas has proven beyond a shadow of a doubt the police response time is more than 15 minutes, even when their only assignment that day, along with the international media, was to know where we were reenacting a Mac Moss shooting on the campus of UT. My firearm is very valuable to me and all gun owners, so we protect them as such against being lost and stolen. And if a woman who actually testified against this bill today can walk around with her giant boobs hanging out, following and harassing me while I'm legally carrying my long arm for my own protection, I should be allowed to constitutionally carry my concealed sidearm against these types of dangerous people without further burdens. Incidentally, I was in Dallas that day the police officers were shot. Only one single person was open carrying their long arm. Perhaps if the people had been armed against the single shooter who killed all those officers, they would not have dared. So I ask you all, please do what's right and pass HB 375 through this committee. Thank you so much, Jonathan Stickland, for all you do to protect the people of Tarrant County. Safety lessons and licensing driving haven't prevented all the deaths that occur each year. Training should be taught in the schools. I'm done.
Any questions for Ms. Hill? Ms. Hill, I'm sorry. Members, any questions? No? Thank you, Ms. Hill. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Our next, or somebody was on the list, was Ms. Benavides, Justine Benavides. She registered against the bill and on behalf of Mom's Demand. All right, so our next group is Mr. Davis, Ms. Dantzler, and Ms. Britton. And again, I'll just remind you, let's not tread old ground. Let's see if there's something new we can say about this and kind of shorten it up if we can. Appreciate you. And then our on deck is Mark Garza, Patrick Hughes, and Adam Kahn. So who do we have here?
Susan Dantzler.
Okay, and John Britton, right?
John Britton.
Okay. Ms. Dantzler, can you tell us your name, your position on the bill, and who you represent?
Yes, sir. I want to thank you first for bringing this to the committee. My name is Susan Dantzler. I'm testifying for House Bill 375. I represent myself. My fear is not imagined, it's real. My father's name is Donald Archie Taylor. He was a husband, my daddy, a Texan, and a staff sergeant in the U.S. Army. He served 19 years and 3 months. He served in Vietnam, Germany, and Korea. My dad was stationed at Fort Hood when his life was taken away on May the 19th, 1981. It is not necessary to get into the details of the murder. Guns are not bad. Guns protect us from evil. You will never be able to legislate morality. Even with background checks, we have in place evil, violent people. And they'll find guns. Because I know that criminals will always find a way to harm our families, I choose to carry everywhere I go. I will not be a murder statistic. and neither will anyone else in my family. It's unacceptable that a law-abiding seventh-generation Texan that I must ask my state for permission.
Ms. Dancer,
I was already granted that permission when I bought the gun that I'm wearing.
Ma'am, could you wrap it up? You got 2 seconds. Please.
I need to add that it took 4 months for me to get my license to carry.
Thank you, ma'am.
What could... I would like to have 10 seconds.
10 seconds, you got it.
Thank you. Okay. It took 4 months for me to get my license. That's not acceptable. What could have happened during that period of time? My dad was taken away in the blink of an eye. The state of Texas is fingerprinting innocent Texans.
I'm going to have to cut you off right
I'm going
now.
to urge you all to please pass this out of committee
Thank you very
and
much.
to champion it on the floor.
I appreciate that. Now we've got Mr. Britton. Mr. Britton, again, I'd appreciate if you kind of stay within the time frame. You know, we'll come and go here and there, but let's try to stay within those 2 minutes.
All right.
Thank you. And your name, who you represent, and your position on the bill, please.
My name's John Britton. I represent myself, family and friends who couldn't be here, and my organization, Cold Dead Hands, Second Amendment Advocacy Group. First of all, Article 1, Section 23 has been mentioned a couple of times. I'd like to read the full article into the record. Article 1, Section 23, every
Sorry,
citizen...
Mr. Britton, did you give us your position on the bill?
Oh, I'm for HB 375. Article 1, Section 23 reads, every citizen shall have the right to keep and bear arms in the lawful defense of himself and the state. But the legislature shall have the power by law to regulate the wearing of arms with a view to prevent crime. Now, bearing and wearing are 2 completely different things. You had asked the question, Mr. Navarez, why don't we just stand pat? You'll see a lot of people here today wearing their pistols on their hip. I'm not, because I haven't sought the permission of the state to exercise my right, and I refuse to. I shouldn't have to. And regulating the wearing of arms might be conceivably covering open versus concealed carry, but it should not be and cannot be conceived to limit people's ability to bear arms in the first place. Constitutional carry or permitless carry is where we've been heading. We've been nickel and diming it with concealed carry and then with license, and then open carry with license. And now we're here to constitutional carry, and it's time to restore the rights of Texans.
Thank you, Mr. Britton. I appreciate it. Any questions for Mr. Britton? There's none. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Chair calls, and I'll get this wrong, but Brandon Michael Daves. Are you here, sir?
Almost done.
Chair calls Brandon Michael Daves. Are you here, sir? Davis. Brandon Michael Davis. Okay. For now, be shown as not wishing to testify, but registering against HB 375. Chair calls Mark Garza, Patrick Hughes, Adam Kahn. Mark Garza, Patrick Hughes, Adam Kahn. And, sir, what's your name?
Hi, Mark Garza.
Okay, Mark.
I'm sorry, Mark Garza.
That's
Testifying on behalf of Open Carry Texas and myself. And I'd like to think that I'd be testifying, or that the most disabled people that I know that are 2A proponents would agree that we need to pass this bill. But I'm for please passing HB 375.
Okay, thank you very much. And, sir, your name is?
My name is Patrick Hughes. I am for HB 375, and I am...
Are you representing yourself today?
I am representing myself. I am also representing Cold Dead Hands, Second Amendment Advocacy Group, and the 1.75 million supporters that follow us, as well as 10 million of them being Texans.
All right.
We've heard so much today. I appreciate all of you for being here and being the public servants that you are. Emphasis on servants, because you are definitely servants. Jonathan, thank you so much for what you've done. I really only have one question, and I think that all of us can agree that we have a right to keep and bear arms. I think all of us agree to that. I think the Constitution addresses that, and I think 99% of the people here believe we have the right. But I ask you to listen to the definition of privilege. By Merriam-Webster, a special right, advantage, or immunity granted or available only to a particular person or group of people. It's a special right granted. When you issue a permit and you ask somebody to pay for it, it now becomes a privilege, not a right. What we have in Texas today, is a privilege. We have to ask for permission from the state, and we have to pay a fee. But it's no longer a right. Our founders guaranteed us a right to keep and bear arms, as most people will agree. I think that we could get back to constitutional carry, and I think it can make this state safer, because we talk about law abiding, but I promise that 99% of the people in here are not law abiding, because we've broken a law. If you speed down the highway, you have broken a law. You are no longer law abiding. But law abiding is what we have in a law abiding person is somebody who respects the natural rights of the other citizens and do not infringe upon those rights. When you have law abiding citizens, which I believe most Texans are, then they are protectors. And if you arm the protectors, we chase the criminals out from where they are at. Our criminal justice system can't stop the criminals. They can't stop them in the prisons where we have them unarmed. We can't stop the gangs in prisons. We can't stop the crime. We can't stop the drugs or the alcohol in prisons. If we can't stop it in the prison system where we've got them holed up, how do we stop it in the streets? We arm the citizens, and we let them handle and force the criminals to no place, no victims.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to have to stop you at that point, but
Yes,
thank
sir.
you both for being here today. Adam Kahn, did Mr. Kahn show up? Okay, Mr. Kahn will be shown not testifying, but registered for HB 375. Oh, sir, was there something else you were wanting to say, or did
Yes, I'm sorry.
Well, I'm
First
sorry.
of all-
I thought you'd finished. Please go ahead.
No. I just wanted to let you know that I was for the bill. But my name is Mark Garza. I'm for House Bill 375. I'm speaking on behalf of myself and Open Carry Texas, a member of Open Carry Texas, and also some of my friends that are proponents of the 2A rights that are disabled. I like to say handy-capable.
Okay.
But I'm going to go over just real briefly some talking points. I like to call them bullet points, pun intended. And I'm so glad I'll never know what it's like to stump my pinky toe on the coffee table. As a gentleman pointed out, you have to worry about shooting your foot off. Well, I'm so glad I don't have to worry about that. I'm eager to see whether when this bill passes, that they strike shoulder and belt holster, because I carry appendix, and I'm worried about blowing something else off. Having said that, I want to tell you a little story real quick. I only got 2 minutes, but I'm going to go through this real quickly. My brother-in-law was banging on my door, running from the law. He's into drugs, in and out of incarceration, and he was banging on my back door. And I was terrified. You know, I want you to know that I back the police. I'm the first ones to call the police. But he was banging on my door, and I was scared. I called the police, and they said, we'll get somebody over. I can't even begin to tell you how long it was before they came. And he was already gone. Well, I found out moments later that it was my brother-in-law trying to get in to hide from the law. Anyway, they take forever. That's my point, that when seconds count, help is minutes away. I carry this gun because I can't carry a police officer. And it's really the statistic that guy was saying about police officers missing their target. It's really astounding, and don't take my word for it. I don't have the statistics to prove it, but I urge each and every one of you to fact check what I'm telling you. It's known that police shoot and kill more people than law-abiding citizens, and those that are for the 2A. There's always been question on who's the criminal. Well, that's easy. Who's the one that's doing the shooting. You know, just a little bit more here. Oh, and I also wanted to say that I have something in common with MDA. I believe that they say that it's more likely that you get shot if there's a gun in the house. Well, I believe you're several times likely to fall down the stairs if you have a 2-story house and you have a staircase. So, that being said, I think I'm out of time. There's a couple of other things I had, and I can't find my notes. Anyway, I'll just go ahead and finish with please pass, do the right thing and pass House Bill 375. And God bless each and every one of you, and God bless this great state of Texas. Thank you.
Thank you for being here today. Next three up. Again, I'll try Mr. Kahn, Adam Kahn. All right, again, he'll be shown not testifying, but for HB 375. Chair calls Amy Hedke, Melissa Holmes, Al Lindsay, Amy Hedke, got it? Oh, there you are. I know you. You're kind of famous right now, so.
I am.
You know, for better or worse. Melissa Holmes, good. And do we have Al Lindsay? All right. Just before you all get started, on deck we have Joanne. We got to work on your writing. I mean, it's just got. Okay, Newberger, Elizabeth Bray, Leslie Irvin on deck. All right, who would like to go first? All right, please state your name, who you represent, and if you're testifying on, for, or against HB 375.
Amy Hedke, representing myself, and I am speaking on this bill because as much as I like Jonathan and my friends here today, this bill still needs to be heavily amended to gut the state infringements. The Heller decision was referenced that alleges restrictions on the Second Amendment. Listen to that again, please. The Heller decision alleges restrictions on the Second Amendment. This is a prime example of why we need the states to be a check on the bad opinions issued by a court that does not want to support and defend the natural right of self-defense or look up the definition of the words shall not be infringed. Y'all are supposed to be our guards of future security, but instead of protecting our rights, you are joining in on the infringing. SCOTUS has screwed up on previous decisions. They are not infallible and more of them should be impeached. Amend this bill to reflect more freedom. The Declaration of Independence recognizes the laws of nature and of nature's God, which includes affirmation of the right to alter or abolish our government. The natural right to defense of self and others is not dependent upon categories of people. People are not cattle to be divided up into categories or trained to your expectations. And Representative Johnson, you might not think the involuntary nature of your state laws are slavery, but when men with guns deprive us of our liberty for not jumping through your papers to act, that is a type of slavery, whether you like it or not. The irony is that gun control in Texas started as a Jim Crow law to control allegedly free slaves. Gun control is not the mark of free men or righteous leaders. The biggest problem with this categories of people excuses the government itself. The average American commits 3 felonies a day. You just haven't been convicted yet. We should be focusing on actually addressing violent behavior, not creating criminals via paperwork and licenses. And why do the people think they won't be able to do their jobs if there are no licenses or training on this? Do they really consider themselves that incompetent? Police and other unlicensed carry states are able to figure it out, and I bet if you add up all those other states, you just might end up with an area almost as large and populated as Texas. There is a reason the constitutions assert powers to make laws, not rights to do so. The rights belong to the individuals. Amend this bill to remove all state infringements and protect Texans from federal infringement.
Good. Thank you.
Mr. Chair. May I make an amendment to this bill to try to make sure that nobody in here has any more liberties to do anything that they don't want to do? May I make an amendment to this bill that says you no longer have the right to come before this body and speak your free mind? May I make the amendment that you
your character
take away
on display
all of your freedoms, because you continue
your character
to say
on
this
display.
You continue to say that this is
Let the representative
slavery.
speak, please.
I'm just simply trying to let you guys know We live
Begging
by
for
laws.
freedom doesn't help.
We live by laws. We all do. All of us live by laws.
And rights.
We all do. Slavery was a law enacted against a particular group of people that said, no, you don't have the freedom to do anything, and we will do everything to you. Not everybody, but a particular group of people. I'm simply telling you, I take offense to the fact that you are asking, or you comparing slavery
I take offense to your gun
open
control.
carry. Simply is what I'm saying to you. Thank you.
Just a second. Thank you. And Representative, you certainly can bring amendments at the appropriate time to a bill before a committee or on the floor. And I'm going to have to, again, just remind everybody to not speak out from the audience, if you would, please. Ma'am, please state your name, who you represent, and if you're testifying on, for, or against HB 375.
Thank you, sir. My name is Melissa Holmes. I'm representing myself and my friend Katie Passman.
Okay,
She's deceased, sir, so I'm the only one who can speak for her.
maybe you can just state your, let's think of how we want to do that. Maybe you can say that she's your motivator. You can't really testify for somebody else, and we have these odd rules, and we don't
May I
want
offer this testimony in her memory?
I think that's a great way to do it.
Thank
That's
you,
a
sir.
great idea. I just don't want to inadvertently kind of create a point of order that we have to
Sure.
deal with later, so.
Sure, I know
So
y'all got
please,
your rules.
So again, state your name,
Mhm.
that you're testifying in her memory, that's just wonderful, and that
All right.
and let us know if you're testifying on, for, or against.
Thank you, sir. My name is Melissa Holmes. I'm testifying representing myself and in the memory of my friend Katie Passman.
And you also registered that you're representing Mothers Demand Action, I think.
I support that group. I'm not officially a part of it.
Not officially representing them, okay?
Yes, sir.
May I change your,
Yes, sir, that's fine. And I am here to speak against this bill.
okay, please proceed.
I'm perhaps unusual for the speakers today in that I represent someone who's not really on the extreme right or left of this issue. I would have every reason to want to ban all guns. I lost someone I loved, a dear friend of 18 years, to gun violence. It will be 8 years ago this Sunday that she was killed. But even before I met Katie, I loved the Constitution. I have heard a lot today about the Second Amendment. But there seems to be some confusion about how the Constitution works. Every single amendment has limitations. Even rights as sacred as speech, assembly, and religion may have reasonable limits put on them when they infringe on the rights and safety of others. The Second Amendment is no different. It's important, but it's not any more important than any of the other amendments. Even the NRA supports responsible gun ownership. It is not an unconscionable offense against heaven to expect that all people carrying dangerous objects in public should at least have a modicum of training in how to be safer with those objects. I should feel safe knowing that a person I see carrying a handgun has a permit and knows how to handle themselves. I miss Katie every day, and I will always wonder what could have been if the man that killed her had not been able to buy a gun. But I don't wonder about the Constitution. I know the Bill of Rights is there first and foremost to keep us safe and free. 375 is unnecessary. Gun owners in Texas already have their rights. Please protect mine.
Okay. Thank you both for being here today.
Thank you.
Chair call. And we had called up Al Lindsay. Mr. Lindsay, or have you made it? All right, Mr. Lindsay will be shown not testifying and that he wished to be, that he's registered against HB 375. Chair calls Joan Newberger, or correction, yeah, Newberger, Elizabeth Bray, and Leslie Urban. Joan Newberger, Elizabeth Bray, and Leslie Urban. And on deck will be Carl Zietz, Linda Briscoe Myers, and Cody Jordan. And ladies and gentlemen, that's the last three we have. If there's anybody else wishing to testify, you need to go register. Don't feel like you have to. And ma'am, your name is?
Hi, my name is Leslie Irvin.
Okay.
And I'm on the board of Texas Gun Sense, and I am reading
Are you testifying on behalf of that organization today?
against.
And so you're testifying on behalf of the organization?
Oh yeah, I'm testifying. Well, what I'm doing is I'm testifying on behalf of one of our members, or one of our volunteers who couldn't be here today. She came and then had to leave
Well,
because she fell
okay,
ill.
Let's
So
work through that just a little bit. You can't testify for somebody else. You can testify for yourself, and if somebody asks you to fill in, that's fine.
Okay.
So,
Okay, so I'll read her testimony.
Let's do it this way. You've stated your name. Tell us the organization that you're representing today.
I'm on the board of Texas Gun Sense.
All right. And are you testifying on, for, or against HB 375?
Against HB 375.
Great. Okay. Please proceed with your testimony.
All right, so I'm going to read this verbatim what she gave to me today.
That'll be fine.
Okay.
And just a second, Representative Stickland.
I just a little bit nervous about reading some of the word and verbiage that have been used by some of those testifying against. But
This is your testimony that somebody helped you prepare, if I understand.
No, this is one of our volunteers who was here earlier today. Her name is Marion Hoy, and she became ill, so she had to leave. So
Okay.
she asked me
So-
if I would read her testimony.
To start over, say her name, who she represents, and if she's against the bill, she can read whatever she wants.
Okay. Let's just back it up a little bit, and I'm sorry to be so confusing
Oh, no,
on
that's
this.
okay.
But Mr. Stickland's very concerned there might be a point of order raised at some point, so we want to make sure we do things right.
Okay.
So it's you understand you're the one testifying, not your friend. If you want to read something, you can read whatever you want to read. So let's just kind of start over. If you'd state your name, the organization you're representing.
Okay, my name is Leslie Irvin, and I'm on the board of Texas Gun Sense.
And you're testifying against?
Against.
HB 375.
HB 375.
Please proceed with your testimony.
All right. My name is Marion Hoy. Okay, so I can't say read this. All right, so I will say my name is Leslie Neal, and I'm reading Marion Hoy's letter she gave
That's
me.
fine.
Okay. Marion Hoy is a former Dallas peace officer, and she has been a TCOL instructor and has been training Texas peace officers since March of 1988. I'm speaking for her today against HB 375. I believe this bill excludes any consideration for the safety of Texas peace officers, as well as the safety of multitudes of Texans who choose not to carry weapons. If passed, what this bill will do is our well-trained and devoted men and women in law enforcement, one, will not have a prayer of defending themselves against an untrained, unlicensed, and unscreened gunman, and two, you will have placed a target on the backs of every peace officer in the state of Texas. Anytime you introduce and invite people to carry guns who have no training, no background screening, and have met no licensing requirements, you're inviting a tragedy. With this bill, you open the door that encourages gun violence, and once that door is open, you can never control the violence that comes through it. The introduction of this bill is prima facie evidence that you have not done your historical research on gun violence in this country, not only toward innocent citizens, but targeted peace officers. So to help you, she pulled together statistics of 50 active shooting situations in the U.S., where 657 innocent persons and peace officers were killed. The breakdown of the 50 shooters is as follows. They were radicalized white supremacists, racists, disgruntled employees, ex-spouse shootings, angry unknown reasons, among others. 9 of the people were depressed and 24 of the people were mentally ill. With HB 375, you can see how with the DPS license to carry program and Texas Penal Code safeguards removed, you will make our lives and the lives of Texas peace officers more vulnerable to death by guns. It's difficult enough out there for our Texas peace officers. If you pass this bill, you'll take away the power of peace officers not only to protect themselves, but to protect us, the citizens. Thank you, and please don't pass HB 375.
Okay.
And I know you need 15 of these, but she only gave me one.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right.
That was okay. Just last time, Joan Newberger. Well, she'll be shown not testifying but against HB 375. Elizabeth Bray be shown not testifying but against HB 375. We have, let me call up Carl Zietz, Linda Briscoe Myers, and Cody Jordan. And then, Mr. Cohn, we do have you down, and you'll be next. Did you sign that? I don't think you can do that. No, members don't. You can speak all you want, but you... I'm sure you can. Mr. Shell, represent yourself. Okay. I've never seen it.
Just give me a minute.
Let's check on that.
Yeah, I've seen you done.
All right. Carl, do you want to go first?
Sure.
Thank you, sir. Carl, please state your name, who you're representing, and if you're testifying on, for, or against HB 375.
My name is Carl Zietz. I am representing myself, and I'm speaking out against House Bill 375. I do this from experience with firearms. I'm a service-disabled veteran that served 21 years. I'm also a gun owner. My father was a lifetime member of the NRA and an accomplished expert shot. He was adamant about gun safety. When I joined the service, I was already an expert marksman. That meant nothing in boot camp. Before anyone could even touch a weapon, we all spent an entire day on firearm and range safety. This included passing both a written and practical test, and that was just the very beginning of it. The reason our armed forces require this training is that history has proven it more than prudent that people be educated on firearm safety before handling a loaded firearm. They are inherently dangerous. Firearms were designed for killing, and they've gotten much more efficient in the last 200 years. I'm not advocating taking guns away from people. I am advocating that we ensure that people that operate firearms have received training in the fundamentals of firearm safety before they carry a loaded weapon. House Bill 375 would remove all firearm safety requirements from the laws of Texas. I cannot see any positives that come from that. There are many negatives besides the obvious firearm handling safety issue. It puts a heavy burden on law enforcement. Our law enforcement officers will now have an even tougher time distinguishing criminals from law-abiding citizens in the split second they are required to do so. This would now allow 18-year-olds with no prior knowledge of firearms to carry a loaded weapon everywhere they go. This adds an entire new aspect to the danger involved. If these bills pass, there will be fatalities because of it. You all know this. You may not admit it publicly, but you know it. Who will be the first one to die? Will it be the patrol officer? Will it be a curious child? Or just some innocent random person standing downrange? All these will happen. The question is, who's first? I spent many years traveling in and out of third world countries during the drug wars of the late 80s and 90s. The one thing they all had in common was everybody carried. The carnage was everywhere. These bills are a step backwards toward that end. Please understand that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ma'am, please state your name, who you represent, and if you're testifying on, for, or against HB 375.
Thank you. My name is Linda Briscoe Myers, and I'm here on behalf of my family. I also am a member of Moms Demand Action. I'm here today to speak out against House Bill 375. I just want to share a personal experience that has helped solidify my stance on this. In September 2010, I walked to my job at the University of Texas Ransom Center. 5 minutes after I passed, a shooter ran down 21st Street, firing off shots right where I had walked. The whole campus went on lockdown for hours. My young twins, who at that point were still in pull-ups, were on lockdown at the campus daycare about 2 miles away. This ordeal lasted until UTPD and SWAT completed a complete sweep of campus and found only one shooter, a 19-year-old student, dead of a self-inflicted gunshot wound from the birthday present he had received from his father. This dangerous bill will make it easier for people who should not own a gun to do so. The young and emotional, people with mental health issues, the untrained and unvetted. I'm here to respectfully request that we maintain our current license to carry laws. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Cody Jordan. Did you have a question?
No.
Okay. Cody Jordan.
My name is Cody Jordan. I'm representing myself, and I'm speaking in favor of the bill. I'm a constituent of Representative Stickland. I'm very thankful that he's brought this bill up a second session in a row. We do love him in the district, and I know that all of you love him as well. I wanted to also tell Chairman King that I really like the fee reduction bill that you brought up. I believe it was last week. I think that these two bills are perfectly complementary. Passing a reduction of the fee allows me to get a license cheaper so that I can carry out of state, while simultaneously passing this bill allows me to carry without having to get the permit at all. And there was some discussion about the carry age. Representative Holland seemed to have some concerns about that. I have some 18-year-old female family members that are going off to college and taking night classes, and it would make me feel more comfortable if they were able to defend themselves on campus. And I would urge y'all to leave that provision in the bill. I support Representative Stickland putting that in there. And I know as good Republicans you won't oppose self-defense rights for adults on campus. And whether or not this bill makes it to the governor's desk is not this panel's concern. If you guys pass this out, the 75,000 supporters that put their names on those petitions this morning, those guys will do all the work. So you guys get this out of this committee and let us take it from there. Thank you.
Perfect timing, by the way. Thank you. Thank you all very much. Chair calls Martin Cohn. And ladies and gentlemen, we have one more witness after this, and then I think we're through. Proud of everybody. Good. Mr. Cohn, go ahead.
Well, it looks like we're finally here. My name's Martin Cohn. I'm speaking for HB 375, and I'm representing myself.
Okay. Thank you.
I've heard a lot of things said today. Heard a lot of opinions and feelings. Fortunately, that's not what our rights are about. We're a constitutional republic, which has been mentioned. It's you people's job to make sure that our rights are protected. The other thing that I really kind of caught my ear was when there were some discussions about the Texas Constitution, Article 1, Section 23. And the last part of that, but the legislature shall have power by law to regulate the wearing of arms with a view to prevent crime. And that always kind of gets my interest, because there isn't a single gun control or any gun law, because we all know they're the same thing, that's ever been passed that does anything to prevent crime. It punishes crime, but there's nothing that you can do as legislators that are going to prevent crime. So approving 375 or not doesn't change that fact. What it does do is allow the gun owners in Texas to exercise their rights with less restrictions, which is what you guys are supposed to be doing. You can't say that we have the authority to regulate to prevent crime when you can't do that. It's your circular logic that doesn't go anywhere. So let's get this passed. We need constitutional carry passed. It's well overdue. Should have happened last session. And the only reason it didn't happen last session is because some folks didn't do their jobs. So I'd really like to not see that happen again. Thank you.
Representative Hinojosa.
I have a question for you. So one of the prohibitions against carrying or the ability to legally carry is that if you can be excluded from that right if you have certain mental illness or you're a felon. Is that something that you believe is? And the reason I ask that, I mention this is because I think those prohibitions are probably in an attempt to prevent crime.
But they don't do anything to prevent crime.
So you're not in support. Do you think that felons?
I don't think there's any law that you as a legislator can write that's going to prevent somebody from committing a crime, because any criminal is going to do what they want to, regardless of what laws you put in place.
So you think?
So you're not going to prevent a crime by putting those restrictions in or not.
Or on people who are mentally ill.
Have you stopped a crime yet?
Well, it's hard to prove something that didn't happen, right?
Exactly.
Right.
Thanks for proving the point. Anything else?
Members, any questions?
Thanks, folks.
Chair, we have one registered witness left, and that's Representative Matt Schaefer. Please state your name, who you represent, and if you're testifying on, for, or against HB 375. He registered, and we will just tell you, having worked with you before, we are strictly enforcing the 2-minute rule.
I'll talk real slow. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman, thank you for your time, members. My name is Matt Schaefer. I'm representing myself, and I am very much in favor of House Bill 375. Proud to be a joint author on the bill. I wanted to testify as a citizen out of respect for so many people who showed up to do just that. I thought it was incumbent upon me to step over here to say that this is really important, and I'm just blown away by how many people came to testify for and against this bill. It really speaks well to who we are as a people. I have seen freedom lost. I have been to Afghanistan. I have seen freedom lost, and that freedom was lost at the point of a gun by people who had the guns taking freedom away from people who didn't. I've seen the extreme, and I never, ever want anybody to see that or to live that. And I do believe that the history of mankind is one of struggle and of violent struggle at times. And many times it is the gun is the difference between freedom and not. The Second Amendment was not written to protect hunting. It was written to protect us against a tyrannical government. And we do have a fee on the license to carry, and it's really a tax. And it's been said that the power to tax is the power to destroy. And I don't believe we should be taxing freedoms like this. So, Mr. Chairman, members, thank you for your work on this, and thank you so much for the opportunity to testify as a citizen today.
Thank you. Members, any questions? Is there anyone else who wishes to testify on, for, or against HB 375? Sir, have you already testified? And did you previously register?
I had registered, but not to testify. But after hearing a lot of the comments
Okay. Come on, what's your name, sir?
Jason Schuster.
Come on up, Mr. Schuster. We'll pull you up and change it to testifying. Give us a second. There's 300 and some odd people to scroll through. All right, we've got you. We're changing you to testifying. Would you please state your name, who you're representing, and whether you're testifying on, for, or against HB 375?
Yes. My name is Jason Schuster. I'll be representing myself, and I'm testifying in favor of HB 375. I'm not an eloquent speaker, and I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a hardcore activist. So I'm not coming with facts and figures and all these things like most of the folks have here today. I'm also not coming here to judge whether or not this is a right versus a privilege, but only just on a very simple, straightforward note that I believe that this bill is designed to equalize the playing field for law-abiding citizens who are not die-hard serious about gun rights. Everyone in this room that is carrying a gun is very serious about their gun rights. They've gone through the process. They're willing to pay the fees. They're willing to go through the training to be able to carry that firearm. But there's a lot of folks that are not willing to do that simply because they're just not that serious about it, even though they may still have a desire to protect their life in situations like, they come across a criminal, a woman who comes across a man who wants to assault her. I believe that this bill is in place to give them a playing field, an equal playing field, to defend themselves without having to be one of those folks that's extremely serious about their rights, not having to be an advocate, to just be able to carry that firearm with them to defend themselves in a situation where they're not going to be considered a felon or breaking the law. That's all I want to say about that. Thank you.
Members? Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to testify on, for, or against HB 375? Yes, ma'am. Are you sure? Yeah. Are you really, really, really sure? Yeah. Come on. And you were previously registered, if I remember, and asked, and had changed it to not testifying, but you'd like to go ahead and testify. Come on up, please. I'm just giving you a hard time. Tell me your name again. My
name is Diana Earl.
All right. We've got you, and we'll change it to from not testifying to testifying. And again, would you please state your name, who you represent? Are you testifying on, for, or against HB 375?
My name is Diana Earl. I'm representing Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense of
Would you
America.
pull the microphone up a little bit to you there, just so everybody can hear?
What?
There you
People
go.
always tell me I was loud.
Well, you are, but I want the people who are watching online to be able to hear you.
Okay. Hi, my name is Diana Earl. I'm here representing Moms Demand Actions for Gun Sense in America. I am against HB 375. I'm a volunteer with the Texas chapter of Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America, and I am speaking against House Bill 375 on behalf of our group. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. Quickly, we are a grassroots movement of American mothers fighting for public safety measures that respect the Second Amendment while also protecting us from gun violence. Moms Demand Action is part of Everytown for Gun Safety, the largest gun violence prevention organization in the country with more than 3.5 million members. Many of our members, including me, are survivors of gun violence.
Take your time.
Okay, I apologize.
We have that effect on people.
Yes, y'all do, especially you, Chair. Okay. Okay.
I did. I threw that softball, didn't I?
And usually I'm the tough one, but okay. Okay, on November 16, 2016, my only child, Dedrick Earl, was shot and killed by a disgruntled neighbor at a friend's apartment complex in North Austin. So it was just 4 months ago, in broad daylight. My son's killer was an off-duty security guard who lived near my son's friend's apartment, or who lived in his friend's apartment. Yet despite having
had the training on narrow circumstances that called for use of deadly force, he made the choice to use his handgun to threaten my son and his friend out of anger. This man was 47 years old, and my son was 22, and his friend was 18. He shot my son twice, once in the neck and once in the upper torso area. My son died in the ER minutes later. His life couldn't be saved. He was just 22. He was a great person with a heart of gold who loved helping the elderly and less fortunate, and he enjoyed his alone time. I'm left home alone to an empty house. I am no longer a mother, and I would never be a grandmother because he didn't have children. This senseless killing has left me frustrated with our current laws. These types of shootings occur every day all over the U.S., and it is extremely traumatic for someone to have to experience this. I want to do what I can to keep another parent from experiencing this unimaginable loss. That's why I'm here today to urge this committee to oppose HB 375, an extremely dangerous permitless carry bill. Time and time again, we hear about our legislators and law enforcement are proud of our permit system, which requires a LTC in order for a person to legally carry a loaded handgun in public places. Yet this bill would dismantle our current system, a system over 1.1 million Texans are taking advantage of. In place of the system that has been repeatedly praised, an honor system will be created, one that would not only make it easy for these dangerous people who have already had their permits denied to disregard this law, but one under the amendment that is being considered by the committee today that would explicitly allow people convicted of violent crimes such as assault to carry loaded handguns in public places. This system would encourage those who might have never had a thought to apply for a permit because they knew they couldn't obtain one are now able to obtain one. You mentioned before, Matt Schaefer, about family violence. Back in 1996, I was a victim of gun violence. And I had a handgun, and I kept it at home. My abuser abused me for over 2 years. It's public record. It's in the police records. He took my gun, and I don't know what he did with it, but I kept it in my home, and he took it, and he got rid of it. He was wanting to use it on me. He tried to kill me several times by throwing me over a bridge. He strangled me several times where he created critical hemorrhaging in my eye. I almost died. So I'm not against guns. I just want common sense. That's it. So I devoted my life to helping people who are affected, like I am, with the loss of a child and family violence. Thank you. Thank you. I got to work 16 hours tomorrow. That's all I have. Thank you.
Well, it's quite a bit. And first off, thank you for going ahead and testifying, and we're very, very sorry for your loss. And thank you for staying all day with us.
Thank you.
Show the picture again, would you?
I have a big one back there. I just didn't want to show it. It's really, really big. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for
Thanks.
being here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bless you all.
Is there anyone else who wishes to testify on, for, or against HB 375? Going once, going twice. Okay. The chair hears none and recognizes Representative Stickland to close on his bill.
Members, thank you for your time, but more importantly, thank you for your involvement. I've been a part of a lot of committees, and I know many of you were listening very intently and paying attention and making notes. I saw you doing it, and I want to thank you for that. In closing, I think everything has been said today. I want to say a particular thank you to my friends who have supported our efforts, including Texas Carry, Texas Firearms Freedom, National Association for Gun Rights, Open Carry Texas, Lone Star Gun Rights, Gun Owners of America, and many others who have helped along this effort. I want to thank my colleagues who have signed on to the bill again for your bravery in standing up for what your constituents want. And I look forward to working with you guys and hopefully getting this bill out of committee as soon as possible so that we can have a chance to take it to the full House. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Representative Stickland. Chair withdraws. the committee substitute to HB 375, and HB 375 will be left pending at this time.
Thank you, member.
Is Representative White here? Yeah. Okay, great. And ladies and gentlemen, I just want to thank everyone and compliment everyone on trying to work with a large group today in large numbers, and everybody did very well. Thank you. We've got one more bill. Chair is going to lay out now HB 1911, and Chair offers up a committee substitute to HB 1911. The Chair recognizes Chairman White to explain his bill.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, Vice Chairman, and committee members. You've had a long day, so I will try to sum this up and implore everyone out there that we have work to do. And if you want us to get the work done, we got to get the work started. So if you have commented on other bills today, especially in support, we're going to ask you to be very judicious with the time of the committee. I think the committee wants to work on the issue before them, but they need to get working. So I'm going to ask supporters that are supporting this bill to please register one way or the other and allow the committee to start their work as soon as possible, and that's tonight. Again, being brief, members, technically, we already have constitutional carry. Let me say that again, because it's important to catch this. Technically, we already have constitutional carry. Right now, if you are a law-abiding person and you meet certain requirements statutorily, you can carry a long arm, that is a rifle. You can do that now. It's statutory. Right now, you can, if you're a law-abiding Texan, you can place your handgun in the glove compartment of your car. You can do that now. So what HB 1911 attempts to do is to simplify that. So you have one class of law-abiding Texan. That's all it does. And so to my friends in the law enforcement community, whenever you simplify scenarios and it's more black and white, that eases the enforcement. Now, I know there's been a lot of talk about law enforcement, and I'm not a law enforcement officer, I'm not an attorney, but we do have case law that discusses this, that addresses this. And if I'm correct, and I know you are an attorney, Mr. Chairman, if I'm correct, Terry v. Ohio already permits law enforcement to stop, detain, frisk persons who are suspected of a criminal activity without obtaining consent of that individual, even though the officer lacks a warrant or a probable cause. That's case law. That's practice now. So practically, because that's what we always want to talk about, what happens practically. Practically, if you're an officer, I hope they're doing this, I know they're doing this, if you approach an automobile, the assumption should be is that they have a weapon in the glove compartment. So we already have unlicensed carry right now. So quickly, under current Texas law, Texans already have the freedom to carry long arms or rifles unlicensed. My legislation seeks to make the laws for handguns reciprocal to that. It doesn't make sense that currently we have more restrictions on carrying a pistol than on carrying a rifle. It doesn't make any sense. Any weapon, as we teach young recruits in the military, any weapon is a danger. Under the bill, those who meet the current eligibility requirements to apply for a license to carry will be able to carry a handgun without the license. Okay, licensed and unlicensed carry will be on even footing without having extra eligibility burdens on citizens to exercise their right to carry a handgun. However, the optional license remains in place to maintain reciprocity agreements made by the governor with other states. So there has been a discussion about people having training. I believe people need to have training. I am for training. We may see other proposals this session that may make access to training more easily online. That's how you incentivize training. You incentivize training by making it accessible. Yes, that's right. Accessible and easy for citizens. HB 1911 puts a protection in place for license holders to be able to petition a court to keep a license. That's in the case that they are having some intersection with the criminal justice system. They can seek this petition. So members, I have some what do you call these, expert witnesses or resource witnesses, and we're going to ask them to come up, and we're going to ask them to be brief and to the point. We're going to ask our supporters, because I don't know of any opponents. I'm sure they're out there. But we're going to ask our supporters, if you support this legislation, you support the efforts that this committee is looking at, to please register and not to testify. We get it. We want to get to work. So I want to thank you, members, and I will reserve the right to expeditiously close.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman White. Members, are there any questions for Chairman White? Okay, we just want folks that are in the overflow room to know that there are open seats here in the main committee room. So if you're in the overflow room and you'd like to come into the main committee room, then we've got some open seats. So we'll now hear testimony from the public. Chair calls Alice Tripp, Terry Holcomb, and Tara Mika. The witnesses that are on deck: Rick Briscoe, Alex Mead, and Anthony Seeley. Rick Briscoe, Alex Mead, Anthony Seeley are on deck. And we're going to go, who wants to go first? All right. Mr. Holcomb, we're going to have you state your name, who you're with, and what your position on the bill is. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members. My name is Terry Holcomb, State Republican Executive Committeeman for SD3. I represent myself, as I'm not allowed to speak on behalf of the Republican Party of Texas, and I am in support of HB 1911. Point of clarification, Mr. Chairman, if I may. I believe I am invited testimony, Mr. White? Yes. Okay. One of the first things that I think I want to address tonight is this question with law enforcement. There's been a lot of question that somehow, if we allow citizens to exercise their lawful right, that law enforcement aren't going to be able to somehow deal with the public. We've heard a lot about Terry v. Ohio, and I just want to put the committee's concerns at ease on this. Terry v. Ohio lowered the legal standard for stopping and frisking in the name of officer safety. That's what it did. From probable cause to reasonable suspicion. If the, I will say this, if the prohibition in 4602 was lifted, which 1911 does not lift the prohibition of 4602, it's important to note that. If the prohibition was removed, then that will take away reasonable suspicion. However, absent of taking it away, it will leave reasonable suspicion that a person with a handgun could be violating 4602. With that being said, the Fourth Circuit in U.S. versus Robinson decided on 1/23 of 2017, basically it held that if police suspect the person of the presence of a firearm, even in the absence of evidence that it is carried illegally, gives reasonable suspicion to stop and frisk. And LEO asking for ID is not a problem. So there is no problem with law enforcement under this bill. I just want to completely eliminate that. Court cases have already defined where we're at with this, and we're fine with it. With that being said, today Texas has an entanglement of gun laws, and it is an entanglement. The research that goes into having to put a bill like this forward is unbelievable, because you have to go through so many pieces of code to find everything that where firearms touches Texas Penal Code or local government code. We have different classes of carrying a firearm by law-abiding citizens today. In general, long guns can be carried by anyone who has not been convicted of a felony or is under a restraining order for family violence. The only places you can't carry based on state law are prohibited places that are listed in 4603. If you can lawfully own a long gun and do not carry in a prohibited place, you can lawfully carry it without a license, without any state-mandated training. Getting into handguns, things get murkier very quickly. Today, millions of Texans exercise their right to carry a handgun without a license all over the state. If you can lawfully possess a handgun, you can lawfully carry that handgun in your vehicle without a license, if it's not carried in plain view. Every day there are guns in parking lots all over this state, in McDonald's, Walmart, Target, Toys R Us, you name it. They're there, without having to pay a tax to carry. So what I want to do now is tell you what 1911 does. 1911 does not expand who can carry. It is very important to understand that under law today. We are only expanding where they can carry. As already stated, we already have citizens that are carrying handguns in their vehicles today. Now we're just saying you can carry outside of those vehicles. We also are saying that license holders and unlicensed carriers are going to meet the same standards. We ought not be creating a double standard in order to exercise our right in the state of Texas. And we do that by changing some eligibility requirements in 411-172 Government Code. This brings licensed and unlicensed carriers on even footing without having extra eligibility burdens, as Representative White has already noted. We also amend 30.05 Penal Code to include an exemption for unlicensed carriers, because currently licensed carriers are exempted under that code. I believe that's something we're going to have to visit in this committee. HB 1911 adds a Penal Code 30.08 provision. So like 3006, 3007, 1911 currently has 30.08. I'm actually going to ask Representative White in this committee to remove the 3008 provision, to leave 30.06 and 30.07 alone, and let's run unlicensed carry under 3005 with the same Class C misdemeanor provision that we currently have for 3006, 3007 signs. There's been enough concern raised about the signs, by friends and even oppositions and business owners around this, and actually the NRA approached us with this as well, that we are very okay with doing that. So I would ask that you look at that for a committee substitute, that we just eliminate the 3008 piece, do not touch 3006, 3007, and just have unlicensed carry run under 3005, with it being a Class C misdemeanor to violate a sign. Okay? The TABC blue signs hasn't been really discussed. HB 1911 eliminates those because it says the unlicensed possession of a weapon. That's an unnecessary sign. It needs to go away regardless, and we do have other bills that are addressing that, but that must be addressed as well. It does confirm state preemption to unlicensed carry of handguns, because we don't need to have a bunch of laws running around from county to county and city to city. It also extends accidental carry at airport security for unlicensed holders. Licensing is maintained. That's very important, and nothing that we do in this bill impacts reciprocity, and we have witnesses here that will testify to that. It extends unlicensed carry protection to foster parents, which is also very, very important. And it also makes sure that unlicensed carriers can carry in a list of 8 or 9 counties, and I actually have this. I'll give this copy to y'all before I leave. If we don't add that provision, they wouldn't be able to carry on certain navigable waters in the state. So it really is time that we get serious. about Texas' right to bear arms according to Article 1, Section 23 of the state constitution. The Second Amendment is a restriction on the federal government. That's what it is. The incorporation doctrine doesn't change that fact. In Texas, we operate under Article 1, Section 23, that Texans have a right to bear arms, and the legislature shall have a right to regulate the wearing of arms with the view to prevent crime. What would I encourage you on that point is the burden falls on the legislature to prove up that whatever regulations we do put in place would indeed prevent crime. We can't just blanketly go and do something because that would, assuming that it would prevent crime, we need to be able to prove it up in order to be operating constitutionally. I believe this is a good bill that we can get a bipartisan support on if we will all just sit down at the table and come together and decide what we can get done. Thank you.
Members, any questions for Mr. Holcomb? Mr. Burns.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Holcomb, for your work on this bill. As a staunch supporter of our Second Amendment rights and constitutional carry, I applaud your efforts and those of others that have worked on this bill and other bills. But I do have a question, and just in the substitute, because I know you're an expert in this area. Can you describe again or expand again on the difference between the way the original bill was filed and the substitute on how we deal with the Class A and Class B misdemeanors? Is there a difference in the way in the two bills and the substitute versus the original bill that's filed? Is how we're dealing with that?
Yes, sir.
Describe that again.
There is a difference in the original versus the substitute. In the substitute, we are eliminating misdemeanors from the eligibility requirements to obtain a license. In the original, it was left in. In the substitute, we are eliminating the misdemeanors.
Okay. Charged or convicted or both?
Both. Charged or convicted.
Okay.
Currently, today, you can carry a long gun with misdemeanors. You can carry a handgun with misdemeanors. Those things are all very lawful unless it's family violence or something of those nature that would get a restraining order put on you. But other than that, and we didn't touch that in this bill. That's still in place for the family violence and the restraining orders and all of that. That's in family code, and we didn't go there.
Sure. Okay. That was one of the things that have been raised to me many times by folks that support both the bills, just a point of question and contention in some areas. So thank you for explaining that. Appreciate
Yes, sir.
it.
Members, any other questions for Mr. Holcomb?
I have a question.
Representative Ray.
Hey, Mr. Holcomb, along the lines of what Representative Burns asked, is there a difference now in the original bill versus the committee substitute on other ineligibility issues such as failure to pay child support and things of that nature?
Yes, sir. Currently in the eligibility requirements, if you have back taxes, you're not eligible for a license, and if you're found delinquent on child support, you're also not eligible. This bill strikes those from the eligibility requirements.
For both a licensed holder
and unlicensed.
Correct.
This bill makes them equal. Another thing that this bill doesn't do, and I think it's important after all the testimony we've had, is we don't touch campus carry in this bill. You're going to have a license to carry on college campuses. I think that's prudent. Campus carries is far too new. It's far too tense, and I think we need to give that some time to resonate before we go down that road, and it also requires that you are going to be 21. I'm also a firm believer that that's where we need to keep that right now. And I just think it's going to muddy up the issue, committee, if we start trying to do this omnibus type bill. You're welcome.
Members, any other questions for Mr. Holcomb? All right. Thank you for your testimony. For more invited testimony, Alice Tripp. Please state your name, who you represent, and your position on the bill.
My name's Alice Tripp. I'm the lobbyist for Texas State Rifle Association. I did not invite my 32,000 members. We've created two categories of firearms in Texas.
Ms. Tripp, will you please state your
Oh,
position
no,
on the
I'm
bill?
terribly sorry. We support House Bill 1911, and we most definitely support continued work on the whole issue. In the 1870s, despite the fact that we have a really good Constitution, somehow the legislature of the moment took handguns, which metallic cartridge handguns weren't even much available, and they were brand new, and we put them in the thou shalt not have, and the only way you could have a handgun was to be on your own property or property under your control. Rifles and shotguns were absolutely not touched. And there was some vague language in the 1870s that dealt with traveling, which would have been cross property lines, on horseback. It was vague. That stayed that way and continues to be that way. The only change was 1995 when the handgun license. It wasn't an attempt before. Most of us didn't know it, and it was kind of colloquial. This county did it, this county didn't. So in 1995, when we created the license, then we had this rifles and shotguns under one category that not restricted, and handguns under another. And we've worked along actually to restore those rights all the way until today. In 2007, this legislature fixed traveling. We said that what you had in your car was like an extension of your home. By the way, the only way you could have a handgun was on your own property or property under your control. The only way. So in 2007, we finally said you could have in your vehicle, and Representative Guillen added watercraft, travel trailer. So we were able to move that handgun off our own property. And that was another step towards restoring those rights lost in the 1870s. Nothing bad happened. I mean, 1995, it was going to be blood in the streets. 2007, nothing happened. And licensed open carry was the same thing. An interim study at the beginning of 2017, 15, anyway. An interim study on the implementation of licensed open carry, and law enforcement told Chairman Huffman, I'm almost sorry to say absolutely nothing has happened, because everybody expected some drama, because all during the session, the drama. And this big change towards what every state has. We're one of only 5 states that prohibit in statute. Texas, Florida, South Carolina, New York, and Illinois, all about the same time, prohibit it in statute. And the rest of those states are either mute or don't prohibit it, and they're doing just fine. So I don't expect when this law eventually passes that there'll be drama, because the criminals will still be criminals, and the good guys will still be the good guys, and it'll be okay. So thank you for your patience tonight.
Thank you for your testimony. Members, do you have any questions for Ms. Tripp? Okay, seeing no questions, we're going to move on to the next invited witness. Tara, and I'm sorry if I mispronounced your last name.
That's fine.
Please state your name.
Most people do.
Please state your name, who you're with, and your position on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tara Mitcha, representing the National Rifle Association, and here in very strong support of House Bill 1911. We appreciate Representative White bringing this forward and appreciate Chairman King setting it for a committee hearing. I think Mr. Holcomb and Ms. Tripp and Representative White have all touched on a theme that I just wanted to reinforce in my testimony, and that is that this is not as significant a policy leap as I think opponents would have you believe. As they mentioned, you can carry long guns openly without a license, a handgun concealed in your home or your car or on your property without a license. We've changed concealed handgun to be a license to carry and given people the right to carry handguns licensed openly. And as Alice said, there has not been a problem. Every time we've evolved and made this law, made gun laws more user-friendly, the law-abiding citizens develop a track record of responsibility and good behavior, and the bad guys remain the bad guys, as Alice said. In my role with NRA, I have worked on constitutional carry issues in other states. Most recently, Mississippi is one of my states that passed constitutional carry. We passed a form of it in 2015 and expanded the law in 2016. And an interesting thing has happened. People were worried during the debate on that bill that folks would stop getting licenses. If you remove the licensing requirement, there'll be no incentive for people to do so. Nobody will get trained. A lot of the arguments you'll hear here. And I wanted to share some numbers with you. 2015 was the last year that Mississippi was under, the first half of 2015 was the last time Mississippi was under its regular enhanced and permit carry law. In that year, they had 75,844 licensees. In the middle of 2015, we passed permitless carry there. And the number at the end of 2016 was 106,481. We're into the first quarter of 2017, and the state's permit numbers are already up to 108,542. So that's documented proof in at least one other southern state where people are continuing to get licensed to carry, even though that's no longer a requirement. And the reason they're doing that, frankly, I've surveyed a lot of our members because I'm interested in what motivates them when I'm meeting with them or speaking with them. And the two major benefits that Texans would continue to enjoy, even if you got rid of the licensing requirement, reciprocity with other states. We live in a mobile society. People travel for a living. They travel for personal reasons. That's a big motivator to continue to be licensed, that you can legally carry when traveling. And also the NICS exemption that license holders enjoy when they go to purchase a firearm from a licensed dealer. It exempts you from the requirement that the dealer call FBI because your license is evidence of a background check having been completed on you. Those are two benefits that I think will continue to motivate Texans to get licensed even if you remove the requirement. And bringing the fee down, wow, I wish I had held out and waited to get my license until it was possible that the fee would have only been $40 or $8 a year. But that will also be, I believe, a motivator for people to continue through the process, but not have to go through the process if they're in an emergency situation or if they just believe they shouldn't have to get government permission to exercise their right. So with that, I'll close. I know it's getting late, but I'll be happy to answer
Thank you for your
questions.
testimony. I believe we have a question from Representative Hinojosa.
Yes, ma'am.
I do. So maybe I misheard, but I thought I heard you use the term permitless carry interchangeable with constitutional carry, and I myself am struggling to figure out the distinction. Can you help me with that?
You know, it kind of depends on the state that you're working it in. I hear it referred to more as constitutional carry here, but in Mississippi, we, for whatever reason, I think it was really a term our sponsor coined there. I don't think there was any different connotation in what it achieved. It was just what we called it.
So they're interchangeable.
To me, they are. And that might, I don't want to speak for the entire gun community, but in my experience, in my states that I've worked in the past, they are.
And one of the reasons I ask is because we've heard different testimony about how far the Constitution goes in protecting one's right to carry. And so I've cited a decision that many advocates for gun rights know well, because I think it was a good day for the gun right advocate community, and that's the Heller decision written by Justice Scalia. And in that decision, that does recognize individual possession as protected by the Second Amendment. It also recognizes, and Justice Scalia, very conservative, now deceased Justice of the Supreme Court, recognized himself in that decision that there are limits to that right, just like there are limits to all rights, and that the government does have the right to legislate even when it comes to the Second Amendment. Is that your position here as well? Do you recognize that decision as being? Do you recognize it?
I don't think my personal opinion on that decision impacts this bill or our position
I'm asking for the
on this
NRA's
bill.
position. You're speaking on their behalf, are you not?
Yes, I am.
Okay, that's what
I
I'm
mean,
asking for.
we found the Heller decision to be favorable in that it affirmed a Second Amendment or a individual right to possess. I think what you may be getting at is, are certain restrictions allowable under Heller? And I don't know that that's relevant to this bill, because this bill, as I understand it, doesn't change things such as where you can carry so-called sensitive locations. I mean, we're not trying to change that with anything we're doing here.
It's relevant to me because, and that's why I'm asking it, because one of the arguments we hear in support of permitless carry or constitutional carry is that the Constitution requires it. And so I'm just trying to understand the NRA's position on whether Heller is a valid Supreme Court decision on this matter.
I think our position is that if you are legally eligible to possess a firearm under current laws, that you should be able to carry that without a permit.
Okay, and so then in disagreement with Heller?
I don't find the two inconsistent.
But just so you're clear, we're of the same understanding that Heller does say you can put reasonable restrictions, that legislatures can put restrictions on that right. That it's not and that it.
I don't find this to be in conflict.
Okay, thank you.
Members, any more questions for Ms. Mecha? Okay, we are going to move on from here to our next witnesses. The chair calls Rick Briscoe, Alex Mead, and Anthony Seeley. Rick Briscoe, Alex Mead, Anthony Seeley. And the members that are on deck, Randall Gates, Eric Schaefer, and Cheryl Archer. On deck, Randall Gates, Eric Schaefer, Cheryl Archer. Okay, I see Mr. Briscoe is here. Mr. Briscoe, you are recognized. Please state your name, who you represent, and your position on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. I am Rick Briscoe, Legislative Director of Open Carry, Texas. I speak on behalf of Open Carry, Texas, and myself in support of this bill. I don't really think I can do a short course in constitutional law in 2 minutes, but the U.S. Constitution, the Second Amendment, establishes, just like other constitutional provisions, establishes minimum standards. The states may establish higher standards. It's our belief that Article 1, Section 23 of the Texas Constitution does establish higher standards. I can provide to the committee a wonderful 1989 Baylor Law Review article, which, if you can call a 40-page article summary of Texas gun law, it is. The shortest version I can give you is that up until post-Civil War, everything in front of the semicolon in what's now Article 1, Section 23 had been in our Constitution, both as the Republic and as our first state Constitution, the Constitution of 1845. Mr. Robert E.B. Baylor, one of the founders of Baylor University, was a member of the Constitutional Convention of 1845, and it's in the journals of the debates of that convention that there was a proposal to include language, what is now after the semicolon. He feared, based on his experience as a legislator and attorney in 2 other states, that the legislature would exceed their authority, which was intended only to be the authority to regulate the concealed carry of arms.
Okay. Mr. Briscoe, do you have anything to add to that in sum?
In sum, we wish to support this bill very much. We thank Representative White for bringing it. There are a couple of things we'll continue to discuss with him and members of the committee. We prefer the term unlicensed carry rather than constitutional carry, simply for clarity.
Thank you, Mr. Briscoe. We're going to show Alex Mead and Anthony Seeley as registered. We're going to show Alex Mead registered against the bill, but not testifying. He represents himself. And we're going to show Anthony Seeley representing Lone Star Gun Rights as neutral, but not testifying on this bill. The chair would call Randall Gates, Eric Schaefer, and Cheryl Archer. Randall Gates, Eric Schaefer, Cheryl Archer. And we've got some resource witnesses members who are available if we needed them. John Ellis, Lana Estavila, and Doug Barnes. John Ellis with OAG, Lana Estavila with Department of Family and Protective Services, and Doug Barnes with Department of Family and Protective Services. But I don't think we have to call them up here in a little bit unless we... They're registered to testify, so we'll just put them on deck, okay? We'll put them on deck. All right, so I believe we have Mr. Gates.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Gates, please state your name, your position on the bill, and who you represent.
My name is Randall Gates. I'm here to represent myself, and I support I'm here to testify on support of House Bill 1911. And as usual, Mr. Holcomb made a much more articulate statement that addresses my concerns in relation to law enforcement officers than I could ever hope to do myself, and I have nothing else to add.
Thank you. Members, any questions for Mr. Gates? All right, Mr. Schaefer.
My name is Eric Schaefer, represent myself, and I'm here in support of HB 1911. And at the request of Mr. White and the respect of everyone's time and everything else that's already been said, I don't have anything to add. Thank you.
All right, members, any questions? All right, Cheryl Archer, please state your name, your position, and who you represent.
My name's Cheryl Archer. I'm a parent of a young adult with severe autism and also who can't speak. And he was just and I'm here to oppose 1911.
Okay.
And
You represent yourself.
I represent James Archer, who is also a voter, and myself.
Okay. We have you in the record as representing yourself.
I represent myself.
Okay, and we can't
Period.
have you representing someone else, but
I'm-
we understand, I think, what you're here to testify about. So
I think
thank
you do.
Please proceed, Cheryl.
Okay. Yes, as a mom of an individual who can't speak and is out in public, very well supervised always, but as he told the officers in the hallway, they were getting to know him, and he can tell everything he wants to say on his letterboard. He probably remembers your names if he saw them running by, and he can probably spell most of them. He's very, very intelligent, and he's also, though, has a lot of trouble with impulse control, and his dream would be to be in this room sitting down. And he said, I wish I could sit down in that room and be there, but my feet won't hold still. So if this young man is in a neighborhood that we're not familiar with every single person, and he loves to be out, we take him everywhere we can, and he gets separated from me or my husband or whoever's with him, he's not going to be able to speak. And someone could feel very threatened. I noticed that he ran up and put his face in very close range of an individual here in the room. And he does that frequently, especially with people that he feels that he'd like to get to know better. And but he knows it's not a friendly world out there. He knows he knows everything that's going on the news. He has very strong opinions about it. And he's always been afraid of guns, and he's particularly, and I for him do not want guns around him in the hands of people who have not been trained and licensed. I'm for having people be trained, and I'm for having people have to be licensed in order to have guns around him.
Members, any questions for Ms. Archer? Ma'am, I just wanted to say on behalf of the committee, we're very thankful that you came here today to give us your testimony.
Thank you.
We are very, I think everyone in the room observed the watch care that you extend to your son. You do a wonderful job. May God bless you and your family, and thank you for the sacrifice you make to ensure that your son has a good life and is well cared for. You're doing a great job. Thank you very much.
He said, "Mom, you're brave."
Yeah, you are. You're doing a great job. So,
I told him I'd never done this before. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, y'all
I
are
better do
dismissed.
that.
Thank you. All right. Chair calls John Ellis, Lana Estevilla, and Doug Barnes. Do we have Lana Estevilla?
She had to go home.
Okay. All right. We're going to show Lana Estevilla as registering neutral on the bill and not testifying. So, Mr. Ellis, why don't you go first, state your name, that you're testifying on a resource witness, and who you represent.
My name is John Ellis. I'm from the Office of the Attorney General, and I'm here to serve as a resource witness on the bill.
Okay. Do we have any questions, members of the panel here, for our resource witness from the Office of the Attorney General? Representative Hinojosa.
Yes. Do you know where in statute it says someone has to be 18 years old to possess a handgun? Is that Texas statute, U.S. statute?
I do not know off the top of my head that particular statute. My duties are limited to concealed handgun licenses for the most part, or rather handgun licenses. Federal statute obviously requires that someone be 21 years old to purchase a handgun. I'm not familiar with this particular statute.
If you are able to find that, I'd love to get a hold of that. Thank you.
Members, any other questions for our resource witness from OAG? Okay. Mr. Barnes, please state your name and what you're here for. Thank you.
Doug Barnes from the Department of Family and Protective Services, and I'm just here as a resource witness.
Okay. Members, are there any questions for Mr. Barnes from the Department of Family and Protective Services? All right, you scared them off, so thank you. All right, y'all are dismissed. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay, the chair calls Jim Phipps, Andrea Brower, and Todd Harrison. Jim Phipps.
Right, I'm here.
And Andrea Brower, Todd Harris.
Are you? I apologize. I'm changing hearing aid batteries, so it happens.
Okay, we will accommodate you while you work on your batteries there.
It's part of being an old tanker. I'm
That's
sorry.
okay. I don't see Todd Harrison in the room, and so we're going to show Todd Harrison as registering against the bill and not testifying. So, Andrea Brower, ma'am, would you please state your name, your position on the bill, and who you represent?
Certainly. I'm Andrea Brower. I'm the Executive Director of Texas Gun Sense. I'm here to oppose HB 1911 this evening. I heard people say earlier that this is not that different than current law, and I take issue with that. This is very different than current law. This makes our license to carry optional, and that's a big change. We've also compared this to our law on long guns and assault rifles, and handguns are quite different. Most people carry handguns, not long guns. Most of the murders, homicides, thefts, accidents, unintentional injuries are by handguns and not long guns. So to say that we're not going to be at risk if people are carrying handguns without a license, I think is inaccurate. Our LTC program, as we know, has been going on for 20 years. It's been successful. We have heard legislators and gun rights advocates say that it is a point of pride for the state of Texas. If we do away with that, we do away with the conviction rates that we commonly point to and say that, look, we can say that gun owners and license holders are the most law-abiding citizens in the state. Those stats will be gone because it will be optional. So in essence, if we pass this bill, it's the equivalent of saying we got it wrong 22 years ago. Training is actually not important. Licensure is not important for the state of Texas. We heard the representative say earlier, people can take training online. You can't learn to shoot a gun online. And I would say that that is very important to get a license. to carry is learning how to shoot. The NRA itself has even said on its website at the NRA, firearm training education is paramount. So I don't understand why we would be changing that now and reducing training. I'm sorry, if I could make one last point. Montana entertained the idea of constitutional carry recently. The governor of Montana vetoed this proposal, and he said, "I will fiercely defend the Second Amendment rights of our citizens, but I cannot support an absurd concept that threatens the safety of our communities by not providing for the basic fundamentals of gun safety or mental health screening." I hope that we'll listen to the governor of Montana who vetoed that dangerous proposal and vote against HB 1911. Thank you.
Mrs. Brower, thank you for your testimony. Members, are there any questions for Mrs. Brower? Okay, thank you. Chair recognizes Mr. Jim Phipps. If you would state your name, your position on the bill, and who you represent.
I'm Jim Phipps. I'm from here in Austin. I'm pro the bill 1911. The concerns I have with it.
Who do you represent?
Myself.
Okay, thank you.
I know everybody in the other groups, but I actually represent myself. Basically, what I've seen in the bill, be quite frank, I prefer 375. I like 1911, but I'm not going to address that. But what I'd like to see, perhaps, as you write law to avoid going to court, which we will someday if we don't all agree, that the law reflects your views. Everyone there has a view, and I would ask that you speak to the authors of what you think would say this is acceptable, this is not. And I understand the politics. I really do. Even though I hate it, I understand it. But one thing that it did bring was I had the advantage of living near here because I'm in, as I mentioned it previously, Representative Hinojosa's district, ran home, fed my dog, let her out, came back, and printed a copy of a discussion from the legal community against violence. You say, oh my goodness, this guy's insane. You know, he's for it. But what they're saying with Heller, and I will give you a copy of this to look, I only have 10 copies, and I'm sorry to bring more, will state that the CDC is a federal enclave, and it's not an end-all decision, nor does it give the states a lot of guidance to work with for future legislation. So what this is saying in so many words, this will go back to the federal court.
Okay.
And, you know, and I'll give this to you, and you guys can let your staff go through it. And let me say real frankly, I appreciate you guys being here. I see how tired you are, and I appreciate you guys doing this. I do see the fatigue. You guys are just
Daisy Fresh.
you guys are the Gorsuch of the Texas legislature.
Okay, thank you for that. We need Dana Half, Lola Estes, Andrew Romero. Dana Half, Lola Estes, Andrew Romero. And on deck, Susan Nelson, Michael Cargill, Dana Earl. Susan Nelson, Michael Cargill, Diana Earl. I can read his handwriting just fine, Mr. Chairman.
Must have crooked eyes. Thank you very much. Who is this, Ms. Cargill? Who do we not have? Dana Hoff? Just make sure. Okay, who would like to go first? Ladies first. And if you would, state your name, who you represent, and if you're testifying on, for, or against HB 1911.
Lola Estes. I'm against the bill.
Welcome back. It's been so long.
I'm against the bill. I'd like to address a similar no permit bill that passed in Missouri and increased the homicide rate. This information is from Daniel Webster, director of Johns Hopkins Center for Gun Policy and Research in Baltimore, and they tracked the impact of the law's change on homicide rates in Missouri. Almost immediately, Webster's team recorded a twofold increase in the percentage of guns recovered by the police after their initial retail sale. This indicated the weapons were quickly falling into the hands of criminal and traffickers. As murders increased, researchers looked at offsetting circumstances like unemployment, poverty, changes in policing, incarceration, and other state laws. Accounting for those variables, they found the repeal of the permit to purchase law was a factor in an additional 55 to 63 murders per year in Missouri from 2008 to 2012. In Jackson County, Missouri, the homicide rates increased by 30%. Neighboring states did not experience a similar spike in murders. The firearm homicide rate nationally dropped during this same time. This study provides compelling evidence that the repeal of Missouri's permit to purchase handgun licensing law contributed to a sharp increase in Missouri's homicide rate, the report concludes. Texas has reduced the class time. They have made open carry, and our rates of homicides have increased. In San Antonio, it was a greater spike in the homicide rate in 2016 than it was in Chicago.
Michael Cargill, the Executive Director for Texas for Accountable Government, speaking for Texans for Accountable Government, and also myself. Typically, I'm speaking in neutral. I'm neutral of the bill. Yes, this is the first time I've actually, the 14 years that I've been coming to this building, that I've actually spoken neutral for a pro-gun Second Amendment bill. And that's because the state of Texas is actually number 26 when it comes to pro-gun legislation. We're number 26. We're in the bottom of the United States. We're not in the top 10. We're not in the top 5. We're not in the top 20. I'm glad today that we are talking about undoing laws that were enacted back in the 1800s by this body, the Jim Crow laws, by saying that, freed slaves could not own any guns. We're actually undoing that today, and I'm glad we're getting into that. What I do not like about this bill is this bill says that, hey, if someone is charged with a felony, that means that they will lose their gun rights. That means that Ken Paxton would lose his gun rights because he's been charged. That means Tom DeLay would lose his gun rights because he's been charged. That means former Governor Rick Perry would lose his gun rights. But then he would have to petition, in that time frame, he would have to petition under this bill, petition a judge, and actually to get his rights for his handgun license. So, that's why I'm opposed to this. We've got to fix that. Those are things that we really need to address and fix. Also, if a spouse, I go home tonight late, which I probably am, and my spouse says, you know what, I think we need to get a divorce, and by the way, I'm going to file that paperwork, and, automatically I will get a restraining order put on me. So that means I'm going to lose my gun rights for 5 years. These are things that we need to fix. If we get into the business of actually changing the requirements for the handgun license, we're going to lose our reciprocity with at least 5 states. I know for a fact 5 states are going to yank their reciprocity from the state of Texas if we get into removing those requirements for the handgun license and start messing with that.
You may not be the right person, or you may be. So talk to me about what reciprocity requires.
There are quite a few things. We have a long list of items here that not just, there are some states, you pick Ohio, you pick Virginia. There are some states that say, hey, you can do, just about anything. Georgia, Florida, great. But then there are some other states like Nevada. We'll never get reciprocity with Nevada. There are other states that, that if we start yanking some of these things from, and they're going to have to do their homework back there. I'm not going to make it easy on them. But there are 5 states I know for a fact that are going to rip the reciprocity from the state of Texas.
How many states do we have reciprocity with today?
We have quite a few, over 20 states that we have reciprocity with right now that recognize our handgun license. This bill is a very dangerous bill, and that's why I'm speaking on the bill, not in support of the bill.
Chairman Navarez.
How do reciprocity agreements come about? Are they issued by the governor's office or the legislature, or how are they done?
Yeah, that's going to be by the AG, and they get with the other state, and they work all those details out.
And I'm not trying to be funny, but how do you know for a fact that that's going to happen? Like, who do you?
Because I've actually reached to other states, and I've actually talked to their states.
So I wonder if we do it like a compact, or if it just.
I mean, not to diminish your testimony, but I just think we're far away from that. Like, we're not.
Well, we'll find out once this bill
NRA would
passes.
know.
Let's cross that bridge when we get to it.
And by that time, we'll have to wait 2 years.
I wonder if there's a resource witness here that might know. Okay.
But I mean, I think you're right. It's a compact.
You know what we ought to do? We ought to get someone here to come and testify next week and just explain that to us. Because I've had several people say if you do certain things, you're going to risk losing reciprocity. And I'll be honest with you, I'm confused on how that is set up.
I'll give you an example, like for lawyers, like I'm licensed in Arizona through a compact, but it's done through the state bar, not through
Right.
us or it's the agency.
Yeah, I would like to. Well, I'll tell you what. Let's see if we can't find somebody to come in next week, and you know more about it than anybody up here. I'm very
And
confident.
HB 375, we don't have that problem, but we have this problem with 1911.
Well, we may just try to get a resource witness in here next week from somewhere to kind of walk us through that, because that's a risk, and that's one of the big selling points to wanting to get a license to carry is that you can carry freely in other states. So let's just do that. I see someone in the distance back there that I think could help us find somebody coming and testify next week. I'm sorry. Nope, you can't testify, but I'm just want to talk to you about it later. Somebody you could recommend maybe, or maybe we need to get the AG's office in or DPS or somebody. I don't know. I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
That's all I have to say. Thank you, sir.
All right, good. Thank you both for being here. Who's next? Okay, we've called Dana Hough, who will be shown not testifying but against 1911, representing herself and Mom's Demand Action. Andrew Romero will be shown not testifying, but as Vice President of the Austin Police Association, wants to be shown against 1911. And Susan Nelson, who is representing herself, will be shown not testifying but against HB 1911. And Diana Earl will be shown not testifying, but she was here on behalf of Mom's Demand Action and herself, and will be shown testifying against HB 1911. Chair calls Bill Eastland, Joseph Walker, and Kevin Lawrence. Bill Eastland, Joseph Walker, and Kevin Lawrence. 1 out of 3. One Ranger, one Ride, right?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Walker went back to Houston.
Okay, fine. Sir, if you would, please state your name and who you represent, and if you're testifying on, for, or against HB 1911.
Kevin Lawrence, Executive Director of the Texas Municipal Police Association, testifying against 1911. I think it's important to note, you'll notice several of the other law enforcement groups that signed up that are not testifying also are against 1911. All of them asked me to point out to you, we are not opposed to law-abiding Texans carrying guns. We are perfectly okay with that. Our concern is not in that. Our concern is that this bill, as it's written, with the substitute, creates confusion. And in spite of testimony that we've already heard, I don't think that the clarity exists even today on what is and is not permitted as far as law enforcement's authority when it comes to people openly carrying guns in public. As a matter of fact, the Tarrant County District Attorney's Office and the Harris County District Attorney's Office have issued diametrically opposing opinions for their local law enforcement agencies about what their authority is. And you know, Mr. Chairman, from your experience as a law enforcement officer and as an attorney, that if we get it wrong, the exclusionary rule comes into play, and then criminals start getting off on technicalities, even though we did exactly what our local DA told us to do. So our concern with this particular legislation is...
And I think that's part of law enforcement. I understand that's part of law enforcement concern, because the worry is that you see someone that you believe you have reasonable suspicion. You're not even thinking in terms, but you recognize they've got a gun. And you approach them, and it leads to maybe a drug arrest or some other type of arrest, and where you've got physical evidence that you found through that, and they are concerned that someone will raise this later and say, well, under a constitutional carry, you did not have the right to approach them, and then the officers in even a more difficult situation of having to rely on that Terry stop or whatever it is. And I understand that concern. It's very confusing. It's a little confusing to me too how that all plays out.
It is. It's a difficult situation. And as a matter of fact, we're still waiting for the case law to come out based upon the changes that were made in 2015 with regard to open carry that we didn't oppose. We opposed the Huffines Amendment. We didn't oppose the open carry. But we're still waiting for some clear direction from the courts about exactly what authority law enforcement officers do have. This
There's some
particular
cases
bill.
in the pipeline that you're aware of?
I'm sorry?
Are there some cases in the
Not that I
pipeline
know
that
of.
you're aware
There have been precious few cases where there's been any altercations at all involving open carry individuals. So I don't know how long it's going to be before we get clarification
The
from
other
the courts.
concern I've had come up, or that has been mentioned, is that right now, it's really, there's so many signs and there's so many places you can go and can't go, and schools and businesses that can post, and some can, and whether it's a 30-06 or 30-07, and you've got campus carry issues, and there's so many different rules. And one of the questions that someone raised to me is well, how are you going to, how does someone, if they're carrying without a license, how do they learn all these rules to know where they can and cannot carry and how they carry?
Well, not only that, how does the law enforcement officer, because if this bill were to pass, we now have people who have a license where it's legal for them to carry. We'd have people who don't have a license, but it would be legal for them to carry if they meet all the qualifications.
Is it a
Other
strict-
people who would be carrying wouldn't be qualified because they wouldn't meet all the criteria, but the vetting for those last two groups would have to be done on the streets and not somewhere in the pipeline before that.
And I'm embarrassed I don't know the answer to this, but if someone violates a 30-06 sign, for example, is that a strict liability crime, or do they have to prove up their mental state, that they intentionally, knowingly, or willingly did it, or whatever? Do you know?
I have no idea. As
Or is
far
it
as I
just the
know, it's a
fact that you
Class C
did it?
misdemeanor.
Yeah, okay.
Unless they're told to leave and they refuse to leave, and then it bumps up to a Class A, I think. And I may be talking about the wrong section altogether, to be honest with you, Mr. Chairman. But that is our concern, is A, we don't want to be vetting these things on the streets. We don't want to make the jobs of our law enforcement officers even more difficult than they already are, more confusing than they already are. And we don't want to bring in exclusionary rule implications that will help criminals get out from under what we believe would, it'd give them a loophole to get through. We just don't want that to happen.
Now, no, the other side of that is we've always had that situation with regard to long rifles, and we've always kind of found a way to work around that. So, I mean, there is some precedent of officers working with people who are carrying without any kind of restriction on it.
And I think you will find, and I was a law enforcement officer for 22 years. I know you were, for a number of years. I bet both of us could recount many instances where we ran across people who were technically in violation of law, but they were decent law-abiding citizens, so we let them go on about their business with a warning. And I think that is more and more, that is the clear message we have been getting from this legislature for the last 10 or 15 years, and that's what we've been conveying to the officers out there. The legislature's attitude is if they're otherwise decent law-abiding citizens, don't worry about it. It's okay. We're okay with them carrying their guns. But we don't want to handcuff our officers and make their job more difficult.
Okay.
That's our opposition to the bill.
Members, any questions? Thank you. Who's next? Bill Eastland. Members, if I can make an announcement, we had Mr. Martinez' bill this morning that Representative Schaefer had concerns about. If we still have a quorum here at the end, we'd like to bring that back up and go ahead and vote it out. It was which number? Mondo's, yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead, sir.
That's all right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Bill Eastland, and I'm testifying in favor of the bill, and I'm representing myself. I am testifying in favor of the bill. However, I prefer the previous bill we discussed. I was going to make a suggestion that there might be a way that you all could come up with a merger, I don't know, of the provisions, come out with one bill that's still a good bill that's moving us in the right directions. In the larger issue in the debate on this concept and this principle, the U.S. Constitution has clear-cut language, I think, regarding the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. It doesn't have any qualifying language. Our provision in our Constitution pretty much says we have the right to keep and bear arms, then it has some qualifying language in the sense that it allows the legislature to pass regulation. So under our state constitution, we've got that. But I take the view that what the U.S. Constitution says in the Second Amendment does control, and it gives the citizens the right to bear arms, and I think it gave the citizens the right to bear arms for a specific reason, which is personal protection, and that extends to personal protection from a tyrannical government. I think that all the other freedoms and rights that we have in the U.S. Constitution are guaranteed by the Second Amendment. And I think it's vitally important that we consider that as we move to true constitutional carry in this state. We're moving in the right direction from last time to this time, and maybe we'll get to a point somewhere down the road that we're going to recognize that this right, this constitutional right to keep and bear arms, is the most basic right we have. Thank you all very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Joseph Walker.
He's in Houston, sir. He left.
Okay, thank you. That's right. You already told me that. Mr. Walker will be shown not testifying, but representing himself, and he'll be shown for HB 1911. Where did that group, didn't we? Yeah, that's the last. Let's go back up again. Okay. Raul Camacho, Cheryl Walker, Leland Reyna.
Mr. Chairman, Cheryl Walker's with him. They both went to Houston.
Okay. Could have caught that last name there.
Yes, sir. Leland's not going to be here.
I'm sorry?
Leland, he won't be here.
All right. Have a seat.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Camacho, if you'll.
See that?
Okay. Before you start, on deck is Matthew Walbeck, Whitney Peak, and Reed King. Matthew Walbeck, Whitney Peak, and Reed King. And Mr. Camacho, if you would please state your name, who you represent, and if you're testifying on, for, or against HB 1911.
Yes, sir. Yes, my name is Raul Camacho with Safety Measures. I'm here to oppose Bill 1911. I'm a farm instructor, practitioner of the Second Amendment. I train people to get their license and so forth. I train people who don't want to get their license as well. So I'm a very big proponent of the what's it called, of the Second Amendment. I wanted to share that paper there with you. This is the reason why I oppose 1911. That Bill 1911 and the previous bill that we talked about, it will make harder for law enforcement to deal with some of these radicals that we're dealing with in our state. We have constitutional extremists. We have folks out there that misinterpret the Constitution. And there are folks out here that do not respect other people's opinion. And so an hour ago, I was bombarded by one of the staff members here because I had a different opinion about the Second Amendment.
I don't feel bad. I had one post the other day that I had a target on my back.
I'm used to it, so I'm used to it. But this behavior was not like this 20 years ago.
Someone who actually testified today, by the way.
Okay, good. Good. But this behavior has changed drastically. I understand people want more rights. I think we're going that route. But to demean others because others don't agree with your rights or whatever. There's some things in here that you guys propose on every year that I might not agree with, but I'm not going to bash you. I have at least the respect to do everything civilly, right? So the problem with this bill here, like I said, it's going to open up a can of worms for more folks to act childish, I guess. Their behavior should not be tolerated. And this is why I oppose this bill. It's going to allow more of these people to speak whatever they want and bash others. There's a lot of shooting ranges, a lot of gun stores that feel the same way I do. Actually, on the previous hand that I gave you on the previous bill, it shows that 92% of my LTC students support training, and so we have a whole different view of the Constitution. I'm all for it. If I wasn't for it, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. But I just wanted to bring up this matter that behavior, childish behavior, will affect the future of Texas if we continue allowing this to happen. Thank you.
Members, thank you.
Thank you.
Cheryl Walker will be shown not testifying. She was representing herself. Be shown for 1911, and then Leela Reyna, who we also called, and will be shown not testifying and against HB 1911. Chair calls Matthew Walbeck, Whitney Peak, Reed King.
Reed King is not here.
Matthew Walbeck, Whitney Peak. All right. Matthew Walbeck will be shown not testifying, but for 1911. Whitney Peak will be shown not testifying, but against 1911. And Reed King will be shown not testifying, but for 1911. Chair calls Joe Palmer, Corey Watkins, and Deborah Bell. Joe Palmer, Corey Watkins, and Deborah Bell.
Joe Palmer and Corey Watkins aren't here.
Thank you. The chair will show Joe Palmer not testifying, but registered for 1911. Corey Watkins not testifying, but registered for 1911, and Deborah Bell not testifying, but registered against 1911. Chair calls Jonathan Garcia, C.J. Grisham, and Jason Rogers. Jonathan Garcia, C.J. Grisham, and Jason Rogers. Who would like to go first?
You can go first.
Okay. Please state your name, who you represent, and if you're testifying on, for, or against HB 1911.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is C.J. Grisham. I am the president and founder of Open Carry Texas. I speak on behalf of that organization and our 52,000 members and myself, and I am testifying in favor of 1911 in support. You've already heard what I've had to say about HB 375. What I'll say is if defending my constitutional rights makes me an extremist, color me guilty. I believe that the word uninfringed means uninfringed. If you stop me from doing something in any way, that's an infringement. That's just the entire definition of it. We have what I call 11 plus 3 constitutional carry states right now. There are 11 undisputed constitutional carry states plus 3 that have constitutional carry that's either debated or it's only for residents, like Montana, Arkansas. So really we have 14 states, which is a 180% increase from this last legislative session. There are 33 states that allow some form of unlicensed carry. If there was a problem with training, we'd know it. If there was a problem with people going nuts, we'd know it. We wouldn't be expanding these rights, we would be contracting these rights. I've also provided y'all with a sheet. This was just something else I wanted to address because there were some questions about where thieves get their guns. And I've got a report here from Duke University and the University of Chicago. The majority, guns aren't stolen and guns aren't purchased at gun shows. Where criminals get their guns is from their social networks, from their criminal gangs, from their friends, from their families. So that's what this report does. I've provided you with the abstract of the report as well as the summary. And really that's all I wanted to say. If it's good enough for 14 states, it's good enough for Texas. I don't think we're any less responsible.
I'm not sure we've got a copy of that. Did we get one, Bird?
I presented it during the last,
okay. Well, that's
during HB 375. You want me to bring it to you? And I've underlined under the abstract and also under the summary.
Good, thank you.
So pending any questions, Chairman.
Go ahead.
All right.
That's your name, who you represent, and are you testifying on, for, or against 1911?
My name is, excuse me.
We're having the same problem.
Yeah, long day.
Late.
My name is Jonathan Garcia. I am representing myself as well as Open Carry Texas. I am a board member, and I am here to voice our support of HB 1911. To begin, I'd like to clear up some concerns. I'm glad that you returned to the room because this is a concern specifically that I heard from you earlier about what restrictions the Heller decision allows to be made upon the Second Amendment. Now, I hope that we can all here agree that government derives its power from the people. And so, following that line, all of our rights are inherent, and our rights are only restricted where they come in conflict with others' rights. So, for example, I have the unalienable right to carry a handgun that cannot be infringed upon. Now, where that can be restricted is if I am holding it up, finger on my trigger, pointing it at whoever I want. That, I think we can all agree, is infringing on everyone else's safety, infringing on their rights, and not something that I should be allowed to do. Somewhere in between me having it safely in my holster and recklessly endangering the lives of others is where those regulations can be made. I cannot give authority to the government to do something that I cannot do myself, because the government derives its power from the people. If I can't tell you specifically you can't carry a gun, then you can't tell me that I can't carry a gun without a license.
Representative Hinojosa.
I understand what you're saying to say that's your interpretation of the Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
But I just want to make sure you're aware that the decision in Heller says something different. And to be clear, I'm not saying Heller, I'm saying actually the opposite of that. Heller is in conflict with this bill. I'm instead saying that Heller says that what currently exists is it doesn't specifically address our laws, Texas's laws,
Mhm.
but it says that we can regulate a Second Amendment right. So, and it says...
Correct, where it infringes on others.
It doesn't say that. It says concealed weapons prohibitions have been upheld under the amendment. And it says the court's opinion should not be taken to cast doubt on long-standing prohibitions on the possession of firearms by felons, by the mentally ill, forbidding the carrying of firearms in sensitive places, such as schools, government buildings. So it doesn't speak to anyone directly threatening the right to somebody else. It goes beyond that. So just to clarify, I'm not trying to state my personal opinion of it, but I do have to uphold the Constitution as interpreted by the Supreme Court of the United States. And so, not that this bill, again, is in conflict, but I don't think my point is, I don't believe our current law is in conflict with the Constitution either, under the Supreme Court decision on this matter.
Okay. Well, in answer to your question, that may be your personal opinion, but...
No. To be clear, I'm not saying it's my personal opinion. I'm saying it's
well, maybe
the
it's my
Supreme
personal
Court's.
opinion that's your personal opinion.
Oh, no.
How about,
That's why I read
can
from
I
the
say
opinion. That's why I read from the Supreme Court opinion, because I want to be clear that is not my personal opinion.
that? You call that a Supreme Court opinion, and that's what it is.
Okay.
And I would like to clarify that the Second Amendment says, shall not be infringed. And those words are very clear. Thank you. Any other questions?
Good. Thank you both.
Thank you, Chairman.
Is this someone already called? Yes. Okay. Jason Rogers, going once, going twice. Jason, Mr. Rogers will be shown not testifying, but for HB 1911. Chair calls James Dickey, Jorge Landiver, and Andrew Clements. And on deck will be Lauren Landiver, Marion Hoy, who I think we know has already left.
Can we just go together? It's my husband.
Well, and the third of our first group is in here anyway.
Just give me just a second.
Sure.
Next on deck would be Lauren Landiver, and you're up, and y'all are together. You can come on up, yes, please. But you can't tell him what to say. I mean, you understand. And then we have, is it Turney? And then also next up on deck will be Amy Mobley Turney. All right. Who would like to go first?
James Sickey.
Okay, please state your name, who you represent, and if you're testifying on for or against HB 1911.
My name is James Dickey. I am chairman of the Travis County Republican Party. I'm speaking for the bill on behalf of myself and the party. Personally speaking, I don't actually have a license to carry, and that's not because I don't think it's wise to be prepared for self-defense. It's mostly driven by the fact that I'd rather not have it on record whether or not I have or carry a weapon. And so I am, personally speaking, in favor of less interference with basic Second Amendment rights from and with deference to the Heller decision. Just because something can be done doesn't mean it should, and I would certainly encourage Texas to lead, if not from behind, at least in the first 12 or so states. Having constitutional carry would be great. And from an official Republican Party stance, the 8,400 voting members of the delegates from the state convention last summer had a chance to vote on 250 planks, and the plank which said we should have constitutional carry scored 95% approval rate, outscoring over 80% of the other planks on in the option. So it is something very clearly wanted by the most active members of the Republican Party in Texas, and therefore I ask that you all support that.
I got a question,
Chairman Navarez?
Yes.
You're a lot different than the other Republican chairman that Travis County had.
That is a true statement.
Could you elaborate a little?
No, let's not.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir? Although, ladies first, we...
Oh,
okay.
We can go at the same time. It's fine. That was the point,
They're not
just
allowed
to
to
keep
do
it
that.
slower or shorter. Okay.
All right, no family feuds, so one of you.
Okay, you go ahead.
Jorge Landivar. I'm testifying for the bill, and I'm representing myself. Well, so much for that. The current law allows the governor to set reciprocity by fiat. I'm sorry, not reciprocity. Set what licenses are allowed in the state by fiat, and also allows him to negotiate with other states, allowing some sort of reciprocity. So you end up with a situation where if the governor says Nevadans should be allowed in Texas to carry, they're now allowed in Texas to carry. Also, if they're he can also go to Nevada and say, hey, you want to be allowed to carry in Texas, you have to allow Texans to carry. He can do that, but he can also just arbitrarily do it by fiat. I think you had a question about that earlier, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, we do.
So what matters there is the other states' laws and what what's been negotiated. Most states, a few states have strict requirements, but most states have something very similar, where it's just a negotiation between the executive branches of the states. That was it. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, ma'am.
Lauren Landivar, testifying for. What was the other thing I was supposed to talk about?
Representing yourself?
Representing myself, yes. Okay. I've noticed that a lot of people talk about there being 3 different classes: LTC holders, non-LTC holders, and criminals. And from what I see, I don't see this creating 3 different classes. I see this leveling the playing field for people who can't afford to or who are unable to take time off work to get a license. My husband and I do have good paying jobs now, but there was a time when we were very poor, and there was a very strong chance that it would be hard for us to afford just the gun, not the licensing fees, not any of that. So basically the part that I'd more like to speak to is there are people who cannot afford the way things currently are, and I'd like to see that get more made into a level playing field. I actually own an AR-15 that I carry around. I've carried it around for protection. It's heavy. I don't know how many of you happen to have one of these, but her name's Gertrude. And they are very heavy. I would like personally to be able to just carry a sidearm instead of being able to, or having to do an AR. And like Mr. Dickey, I actually don't want the government knowing all about everything that I own and everything that I do, so I don't have an LTC either. Sorry, am I done? I'm out of time? Or now I'm out of time. Anyway, thank you.
Perfect timing. Thank you all for being here very much. We called Andrew Clements. Has not responded. We'll show him not testifying, representing himself, and he registered for HB 1911. We're still here, and I'm just not going to do that. Get to tell Ashley to come in a second. Chair call. Well, we know Ms. Hoy's not here. Marion Hoy, I think we learned earlier had left. Marion Hoy. Okay. Ms. Hoy will be shown not testifying, but representing herself, registered against 1911. Amy Mobley Turney and Kenneth Claiborne. Kenneth Claiborne and Roseanne Ferraro. Roseanne Ferraro. And are you Ms. Turney?
Yes.
Good. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you.
If you would just tell us your name for the record, who you represent, and if you're testifying for, against, or just on HB 1911.
Sure. I'm Amy Mobley Turney, and I'm testifying for myself and as a member and on behalf of the League of Women Voters of Texas against House Bill 1911.
Okay.
So we've been around for about 100 years, and we testify the same way with a little preamble, and I'm going to skip over that since I didn't get to say everything I would have liked to last time.
Go ahead.
And I'll pick up. The League of Women Voters of Texas opposes this proposed legislation because it removes virtually every safeguard currently in place to ensure that dangerous individuals are prevented from carrying handguns in public by repealing requirements that people carrying handguns applying for a permit and repealing certain eligibility standards such as passing a background check and demonstrating proof of firearm safety training. The Second Amendment is one sentence. It reads in its entirety, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Justice Antonin Scalia wrote in his majority opinion in District of Columbia v. Heller, there seems to us no doubt on the basis of both text and history that the Second Amendment conferred an individual right to keep and bear arms. Of course, the right was not unlimited, just as the First Amendment's right of free speech was not. Thus, we do not read the Second Amendment to protect the right of citizens to carry arms for any sort of confrontation, just as we do not read the First Amendment to protect the rights of citizens to speak for any purpose. As an example of lawful limitation, Justice Scalia states that the prohibitions on carrying concealed weapons were lawful under the Second Amendment. House Bill 1911 encourages individuals to act unsafely and provocatively and reduces the ability of the community to prevent acting out or terrorist acts. Thank you.
Members, any questions? Ms. Hustle. Okay, thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Ms. Ferraro will be shown not testifying, but against HB 1911. Kenneth Cleghorn will be shown not testifying, but for HB 1911. Chair calls David Ahmad, John Michael Gillespie, and Brandon Michael Daves. I think we called them in the last bill too as well, didn't we? Oh, here we go. Yes, sir, and who are you?
John Michael Gillespie.
Good. Thank you for being here, and stay State your name, who you represent, and if you're testifying on, for, or against 1911.
Yes, sir. My name is John Michael Gillespie. I am a board member of Texas Carry. I represent our members and myself. I am testifying for HB 1911. Before I get into my testimony, I just want to comment on some prior testimony. I'd like to say that you should probably measure the validity of testimony upon its accuracy. It was stated that we have never had reciprocity with Nevada and that we never will. We have reciprocity with Nevada and have for a year. So I can email that to you in terms of the reciprocity effects of HB 1911. So, as an LTC instructor, licensed by the state and a master firearms instructor, I professionally teach the public, security, and law enforcement officers all over the state, and I employ instructors that do the same. A concern that's been brought up time and time again through the last bill and through this bill is that the unlicensed individuals will not receive the same training that LCC holders do in the use of firearms and firearm safety. The reality is that the Texas curriculum does not teach LTC holders how to use a firearm. It is a 4-hour legal information course with some firearm safety slides and then a proficiency demonstration. The student has to have already taken the self-responsibility to learn how to use a firearm before the class. We're not able to teach them that. That is just the point that I wanted to make in terms of the firearm safety. The LTC class will still be available to unlicensed carriers. They don't have to get the license. They can take it for the information. The CHL 16 is put out by DPS online. It's all there for everyone. So thank you, Mr. Chairman and the committee. I really appreciate you being patient and being here all day.
Thank you, members. Any questions? Thank you. David Ahmad will be shown not testifying, but for 1911. And Brandon Michael, I believe it's Daves, will be shown not testifying, but against HB 1911. Chair calls Robert Odendahl, Amy Hedke, and Melissa Holmes. And on deck will be Al Lindsay, Elizabeth Bray, and Leslie Irvin. Welcome back.
Hi, guys.
Hello. Please, you know the drill. Please state your name, who you represent, and if you're testifying on, for, or against HB 1911.
Amy Hedke, representing myself, and I am testifying on for the same reason that I testified on 375. Based on a lot of the comments that I've heard from the committee and from a lot of people testifying, it seems that we do have a foundational misunderstanding of what real freedom is. Representative Johnson has been talking about how we're free and that this is not a matter of slavery. But in the United States of America, I cannot own property without permission from the state. And then I have to pay the state to keep that property. I cannot own a car without permission from the state, and I have to pay the state to keep that car. I cannot drive that car without permission from the state, and I have to pay to drive that car. I cannot get a job without permission from the state.
Ms. Hedke, can I interrupt you just for
Yes.
1 second, because I just want to make sure we've got you down right. You're showing to be testifying neutral on the bill?
Yes.
But
And I'm laying the foundation for why I'm neutral and
Okay.
my position.
All right, just want to make sure we had it down right.
Yes,
Go
thank
ahead.
you. So I cannot even get a job without permission from the state, and the state's going to take a cut of that job, one way or another. I can't even leave the country and move to Somalia without permission from the government and paying an extortion fee. When we're looking at whether we are free or not, those are not the actions of free people. I talked about the fact that that gun control is not an action of free people, and it's not for righteous leaders. You've talked about Heller and how you have to uphold SCOTUS. No, you don't. That's the whole purpose of our government's system of checks and balances. You guys are the check. You're the last line of defense against courts that are infringing upon our freedoms. This is where we have to come to you and say and ask you to help protect us from government overreach. We're asking you to do that. Is that my time?
That's it.
Okay.
Members, any questions? Okay, thank you for coming back.
You bet.
Robert Odenhall will be shown not testifying, but against HB 1911. Melissa Holmes will be shown not testifying, but against HB 1911. Chair calls Al Lindsay, Elizabeth Bray, and Leslie Irvin. Al Lindsay, Elizabeth Bray, and Leslie Irvin. Okay. Mr. Lindsay will be shown not testifying, but against HB 1911. Elizabeth Bray will be shown not testifying, but against HB 1911. And Leslie Irvin will be shown not testifying, but against HB 1911. Chair calls Linda Briscoe Myers, Barbara Legier, and Molly Bursey. Great. Thank you for being here. Who would like to
I'm
go?
Barbara.
You're Barbara. Barbara, why don't you go first?
Okay.
Please state your name, who you represent, and whether you're testifying on, for, or against.
Thank you. My name is Barbara Legier.
Well, I got, like, in the ballpark. And
I know.
got Barbara right.
I'm with you. It is
I
tough.
got Barbara right.
Yes. I'm here on behalf of Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense and myself, and we're opposed to 1911. Growing up, I didn't know you could eat spaghetti without venison until high school when I went to a friend's house and her pastas tasted really funny. Both of my fathers were avid hunters and licensed concealed handgun owners. I'm comfortable around guns as long as the person carrying has maintained their licensing requirements. I recognize that people like both of my fathers prefer to carry handguns in public situations, and I believe those people should be at least trained in the basics of our safety laws and should fire a gun before they carry one in public. Consider the training Texas law enforcement officers undergo, from Texas Rangers to sheriffs to police officers. Training in firearm safety and dispute resolution isn't a one-time training for them. It is ongoing, repeated, and necessary to keep the public safe. Licensing Texans ensures a basic understanding of laws and safety precautions and ensures a carrier knows how to use that firearm and is a necessary baseline that allows citizens to carry responsibly. The world is dangerous, and many Texans choose to carry firearms to protect themselves. I just want those that choose to carry to be safe, background checked, and trained for your protection and mine, for the protection of law enforcement and the public. I urge you to reject 1911. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Members, any questions? Ma'am?
Good afternoon. My name is, sorry, I think I got a cold just sitting in here, so I'm a little stopped up. I apologize. My name is Molly Bursey, and I am here representing myself and Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America. I live in New Braunfels with my 5-year-old son and my husband.
Are you testifying for or
Sorry, against. I thought I had it all down. And I'm also a gun owner. But like I said, I'm here today to urge the committee to vote against HB 1911. Time and time again, we hear about how legislators and law enforcement are proud of our permit system, which requires a license to carry in order for a person to legally carry a loaded handgun in public places. Some say that LTC permit holders are some of the most law-abiding and responsible citizens in Texas. Yet this bill would totally dismantle our current system, something that over 1.1 million Texans are taking advantage of, and a system that makes sure that those 1.1 million Texans underwent a background check and firearm safety training before they could carry a handgun in public in Texas. In the last year, over 1,000 permit applications were denied, nearly another 1,000 revoked, and another 1,600 suspended. Our current system has a process in place to help make sure that dangerous people are not able to carry in public, either by denying, suspending, or revoking a permit when they are not eligible to have it. In place of the system that has been repeatedly praised, an honor system would be created, One that would not only make it easy for these dangerous people who have already had their permits denied to disregard the law. Am I done? Okay. Thank you guys very much.
Good. Thank you very much. Thank you for staying so late. Linda Briscoe Myers will be shown not testifying but against HB 1911. Chair calls Nicole. No.
So these people registered twice. So we need to make sure.
Okay. Kelly Aller. Yeah. Is she here? Can we have her registered twice?
Two different things, but we'll just make her.
But on each one, shown not testifying and against 1911. Nicole Golden will be shown not testifying. Oh, we just called her up. I'm sorry. So are all.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
Okay, just saying we're trying to straighten out these last few. I apologize. We had some people double registered and has things confused just a little bit. Have we ever called her up? Chair calls Nicole Golden. Nicole Golden. And ma'am, we've got you registered twice.
I did register twice. The second time was to testify.
Okay. So the first time you registered just to not test. Right, okay. So now you'd like to testify.
Yes, thank you.
All right. And so if you would, state your name,
Okay.
who
I
you
guess-
represent, and if you're testifying on, for, or against
We
1911.
must be reaching the end because I was toward the end of the list.
No, you're fine.
I'm Nicole Golden, and I'm testifying on behalf of myself against 1911.
Okay.
Thank you, guys. I know it's a long night. I need to get back to my family. I'm sure you do too.
And are you also, you registered for Moms Demand Action? Are you representing them as well?
That was the one that I nixed.
Okay.
Yeah.
So as you're testifying, you're just representing yourself.
That's correct.
All right.
Thank you. I didn't prepare any big statement. I listened to a lot of testimonies today, and I guess I just wanted to leave my statement that you guys are here for a reason. You guys are here for our safety and security, and we appreciate that. And I think as a Texan, and I think a lot of other Texans feel like it's because you guys are doing your job that we can say, well, there's at least a modicum of a minimum of safety that we know is in place, so that we can go about our business and our lives and feel that someone's watching out for us. And the licensure system is one of those. And I count on you guys here in this building, and especially this committee, to keep things like that in place, so that when I'm going about my day with my kids, which that's my life, that's what I do, that I can feel somewhat secure that folks who are carrying guns have gone through some steps. And I'm hearing some folks here today say they believe in training, but they want to do it online or whatever. Well, the training that we have is working. Online training probably costs money too. I don't think we're asking a lot. I want to keep it. So I ask you guys to please reject 1911. Thanks.
Very good. Thank you. Members, any questions? All right. Thank you
Thanks,
very much.
thanks.
Thanks for staying so late.
Thank you.
Where are we at? That it? Okay. Is there anybody else who wishes to testify on, for, or against HB 1911? Yes, ma'am. Have you already registered?
I've registered, but I didn't register to testify.
All right. What's your name, ma'am?
My name is Mary Kusi.
All right. Let us find your name. How do you spell your last name?
K-U-S-E.
All right. We're changing it to that you are testifying.
Okay, great.
And as you've heard, please state your name, who you represent, and if you're testifying on, for, or against HB 1911.
I'm Mary Kusi, K-U-S-E. I'm testifying against 1911 or any law that promotes the proliferation of firearms in
Ma'am,
this
can
country.
I ask you registered under Moms Demand Action, representing them? Are you?
I'm not a spokesperson. I am a member and also a member of Texas
So you're
Gun
just
Sense.
testifying on
I'm
your own behalf
testifying
now?
on my
Okay,
own
thank
behalf.
you. Go ahead.
But I would like to point out a couple of things that were missed. And I feel like that this bill does not simplify the law, but it makes it more complicated. And it makes people analyze these complex requirements and determine their own eligibility for carrying a firearm. And it leads to confusion and misunderstandings, and it makes law enforcement's job that much more difficult when they have to interact with people who carry firearms. Now, we don't give this same freedom to doctors who also make life and death decisions. They're required to have licenses, training, years. But when we're washing our hands of all gun control, I feel like we're giving private citizens the legislator's duty, a judge's duty, a juror's duty, and an executioner's duty in a split second. And I think that's ridiculous. I think we need to be more responsible with tools that are designed to kill people. I usually wear a bulletproof vest in these situations. When I'm a member of MOMS, when I'm representing gun control and responsibility with firearms. It says bulletproof is the new black on the back of it.
Okay.
Because I think if this continues, everyone will be wearing bulletproof vests. And it's heavy, it's ugly, and I don't want to see it.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone else that wishes to testify on, for, or against HB 1911? Hearing none, the chair recognizes Chairman White to close on this bill. And members, I remind you, we're going to try to pass out Representative Martinez's bill when we finish. Just take a second.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Just quickly here, Section 4606, I believe, of the Penal Code addresses 18-year-olds and their possession rights of firearms in Texas. Just a correction. Had someone come up here and talk about eligibility and felony requirements in this particular bill. This particular bill does not change the issue of eligibility that's as it relates to felony charges. That's already current law. It doesn't change that. What it does, it gives citizens a pathway to do a petition to the court to maintain those that right. But it's important for me as a member to come to you with something that's sensible and logical. And I don't know if it's sensible and logical to ask you to vote for something that would have someone on a first, second, third degree felony to still walk around with a weapon without having some type of vetting process. But that's already current law now. Okay, so I was quite curious about that. Again, I'm not law enforcement, and we got to work out this practically. But when we talk about, well, what do I do, law enforcement? What do I do when I see someone? Section 42.01, disorderly conduct. If someone is acting disorderly, that's what you do. You go do what you do as a police officer. If someone is just walking, minding their own business, I guess you do what we all do. You just allow the person just to walk and mind their own business. The second time today I've heard this issue about Missouri. There was a spike after they went to the so-called unconstitutional carry in 2007. There was a spike in 2008, but the FBI data does indicate a decline after 2008 until 2012. And according to that same data, it's still pretty low, much lower than the high they had in the mid-90s before they had a constitutional carry. So with that, members, it's done, and we'll do what we do, whatever we do. And I'll close.
Members, any questions? Hearing none, thank you, Chairman White. Chair withdraws the committee substitute to 1911, and HB 1911 will be left pending at this time. one little last bit of, and ladies and gentlemen, thank you all so much for being patient today and long-suffering and working through the day with us. And hopefully this will be the longest hearing that any of us ever have to attend. So we started at 8 this morning. It's 8:20. And anyway, thank you very much, and thank you to the authors as well.
I'm not going to hear that marijuana legalization bill.
Not going to do that marijuana legalizing bill tonight, so or the other, or the other stuff.
Go another 8 hours.
Chair lays out HB 106 by Martinez as a matter of pending business. Members, as you recall, this bill we looked at this morning and related to certain images captured by an unmanned aircraft. There were some concerns. I think those concerns have been satisfied. Representative Schaefer offers a committee substitute to HB 106. Members, the committee sub clarifies that telecommunications providers are utilities under Section 423.002A5 of the Government Code. Is there objection to adopting the substitute? Hearing none, the substitute is adopted. Representative Holland moves that HB 106 as substituted be reported at full House with a recommendation that it do pass and be printed and placed on the general calendar. Clerk will call the roll.
Chairman King.
Aye.
Vice Chair Navarez.
Aye.
Representative Schaefer.
Aye.
Metcalf.
Aye.
Burns.
Aye.
Ray.
Aye.
Johnson. Holland. Hinosa.
Being 9 ayes and 0 nays, the motion prevails. Prevails. I would once again thank the members of the committee, the witnesses, interested parties for being here today. Anything else, Vice Chairman? Anything else, members? Hearing none, Committee on Homeland Security and Public Safety stands adjourned, subject to the call of the chair. Thank you. Who?